Hi, welcome to Comic Book Report. As I have someone staring over me in fairly crazy eyes. This is something I wanted to start for a while, and now we get to do it, which is fun.
So All-Star Superman, right?
Right. So, this first ever delightful episode of me making my friend read comics I like, and occasionally comics I don't like. We're starting with the beautiful All-Star Superman. So, I wanted to talk first and foremost about the All-Star line of comics.
Okay.
Because it's not just All-Star Superman.
Alright, I'm following.
You can do the entire title.
No, I'm not gonna do it. Okay. I was just fucking with you.
Yeah, no, so the All-Star line of comics was originally supposed to be kind of like continuity-less stories, right? So ideally you'd have like All-Star Superman, All-Star Batman, All-Star Green Lantern, Flash, Aquaman, different characters, right? That's what it was supposed to be. It was supposed to be it was called All-Star because what it was supposed to be like star like creators working together on really good comics, right? There's only 2 All-Star books, and one of them is not finished. It's All-Star Superman, what we're talking about today, and All-Star Batman and Robin the Boy Wonder. Cody knows my disdain for one Franklin Miller. I don't know if that's his actual name or not, but we're just gonna call him Franklin Miller.
Yeah, Frank.
Oh, poor old Frank. Basically, so the deal with All-Star Batman and Robin was it's bad. It's really bad. Like, very poorly written, very bad dialogue. At one point, Mr. Bruce Wayne says, quote, "I'm the fucking Batman, that's why." And from what I know, it only had like 2 issues. It was supposed to have like 5. But it was Frank Miller and Jim Lee. Jim Lee's a really good artist. He did Batman Earth 1 and Superman Brainiac with Jeff Johns, who he works with a lot. And Jeff Johns is also pretty good. He also did Batman Earth 1. So he's a really good artist. Or not Jim Lee. I'm thinking of Gary Frank. Still, Jim Lee. Really good artist. Really good Batman. Really good Superman artist. Nobody knows why it necessarily got, canned. But basically because of All-Star Batman and Robin, the All-Star line of comics just... So all we know about All-Star is All-Star Superman, basically, right? It's also written by Grant Morrison, who is a really good guy. I don't want to say too much, but he's done Doom Patrol. He's done an X-Men run that was really good with Frank Wiley. So yeah, let's hear your book report, dog.
In what context do you have Bruce Wayne saying, "Because I'm the fucking Batman, that's why"? In what context? In what world is that required ever?
Do you want to know what the thing was?
What?
It was supposed to be connected to The Dark Knight Returns. Yep.
Yeah.
I know you guys can't see it, but Cody just took a long blink at me. Yeah, no, it was supposed to be connected to stuff like Batman Year 1, which we're going to talk about another day, and then Dark Knight Returns, which is like his 2 most famous Batman stories.
Alright, I'm following.
And this was after Frank Miller was off his meds. But we're not here to talk about Frank Miller.
The Kanye of comics.
Exactly. Oh my god, he literally is, except Kanye makes good music.
For real!
And Frank Miller writes bad comics. God, I can't wait to look like a hypocrite whenever we talk about his work on Daredevil and shit.
For real.
Yeah. So, how did you feel about All-Star Superman?
I mean, I liked it a lot. I felt... I don't know how to describe it. I felt like it was a pretty good, showing of, coming to terms with the fact that he's dying kind of thing, because it's just kind of like him, you start off with the idea that you, within, the first few pages, yeah, you're terminally ill.
Yeah, it's fucked.
Yeah, and then, the entire time it's just kind of him, trying to do things that he wants to do. He reveals to Lois Lane that he's Superman, and Samson's oh, you do a bunch of things before you die, supposedly.
Yeah.
And then it's just kind of him trying to wrap stuff up before he dies.
It has a very I have to make peace with everyone tone to it.
Bro went back in time just to see his dad die.
Yeah. Let's see what I've written down on my notes, because I have a few notes that I do want to talk about, and then we kind of riff from there. You know what my favorite part about this run is? It's so full of heart. You know what I mean? Like even in his final moments, Superman is he's so focused on like other people, right? Like those 2 chapters where she just doesn't like believe that he's Superman, and she's like, so when's Clark coming out from behind the icebergs? And he's like, Lois.
There is no Clark Kent.
Yeah, only Superman. Yeah, no, I like that because it's kind of one of the big things was that the point of All-Star Superman was to boil him down to the quintessential. I think it was Owen Likes Comics, a YouTuber who I really like. He said that it was to boil down the quintessential and timeless aspects of Superman.
Yeah.
And you can see that a lot with stuff like, this is going to sound really simple, but the fact that he has the trunks design, which is kind of his classic design, how it takes influence from basically every version of Superman that exists, Golden Age, Silver Age, the modern stuff that was going on at the time of making, a little bit of John Byrne. It's very much quintessential Superman, right? You know, a fundamentally selfless character, even in his finest even like in his final moments, which I really like. Oh, hi, baby. The cat just got on top of me.
Oh, I thought you were just calling me baby.
No, you're not.
I was like, damn, take me to dinner first.
I'll take you to dinner later.
Oh, okay, cool.
Yeah. Yeah, I don't know, man. It was just like, okay. So this is so context. This is my 3rd reread, right?
Yes.
And the whole point of this little series is I read comics.
Yeah.
You don't.
Yes.
And I want to see your opinions on stuff I've read before, as well as stuff I haven't read before.
I only read the silly little Japanese comics.
Like, shit, I gotta think of one now that isn't just Berserk.
I mean, I've read JoJo.
But this is like my 3rd reread, right?
Yeah.
And I love this book.
Yeah.
I do. Like, everything about it is perfect in my opinion, right? It's good, it's got good art, it hits, right? It's kind of for me personally, I feel like it's a good starting point for someone who doesn't know anything about Superman beyond the basic stuff. Like, if someone was like, I want to read Superman, but I don't know what makes a good Superman story, right? Or if someone's like, I don't like Superman, you know, I'd be like, read this. It's good. It's great. It's fantastic. Read it. The art in this is really good.
Yeah, I mean, I can see why someone wouldn't like it, though.
Yeah,
like, if someone... Because, like, that was one of the things you told me, is that, like, you know, you were like, oh, some people aren't the biggest fans of, like, this illustration.
Frank Quietly.
Yeah, which, like, I can understand. I like... For me, I'm definitely, like, okay with, like, kind of out there art. Mm-hmm. And I feel like there are a decent amount of panels where it's just kind of out there. Yeah. Like, I could see, like, maybe why, like, during the part where he goes back in time so he can revisit his dad, there's, like, the 5th dimension Superman, which the 5th dimension, or is it 4th dimension or 5th dimension?
It's 5th dimension, because he's meant to be like a Mixate Spittle kind of character. Yeah,
5th dimension Superman literally looks like every old person drawn by Araki ever. Yeah. And then the scene with, like, the girl on top of the building, whenever it's, like, that second to last chapter when he's just, like, doing good things all around, she is very poorly drawn, in my opinion.
Yeah, we'll talk about that page later. But, yeah, I don't know. So Frank Quietly has done a lot of work with Grant Morrison, right? Yeah. In fact, they're probably most well known for their collaborations together. In fact, they had a thing they did, I think it was him and Grant Morrison, where it was, to go on a small tangent, Watchmen.
Who watches the Watchmen?
So Watchmen was originally supposed to use the Carlton Comics characters, Blue Beetle, Captain Atom, The Question, other characters. A Peacemaker. Thank you. That's what I was thinking. Peacemaker. So what? Again, if I am wrong, I'm gonna look like a fucking idiot. Grant Morrison and Frank Quietly did a comic book where it's kind of the plot of Watchmen, but like it is those original Charlton Comics characters. Yeah. Yeah, because the reason why they didn't use Charlton Comics characters was because DC had just acquired the rights. Yeah. Yeah, they had just acquired the rights to the characters. Like, hey, we kind of want to use these characters. Please don't make them worse than they could possibly be. Parentheses, The Question was created by Steve Ditko, and it's a bit of a piece of shit. But in that, the artwork's really good, and Frank Quietly is just, frankly, a fantastic artist. And I don't think I would have wanted a different artist like for this. You know what I mean? Like, I feel like his style, especially with the colorist that they have for this, right? It's very human, but in a way that's not like uncomfortably human. You know what I mean? Where like it's still that level of cartoonishness. And I will say that reading it physically, like you did for this, was probably better.
Oh no, for sure. I could see how someone could be turned off with like the art style if it was done like online on a screen.
Because that's how I was on my first read. Because it came free with Prime Reading, right? That's how I read it this last time as well. Was on my tablet because you had my copy. And the first time I kind of bounced off the art and was like, but still enjoyed the story. And then whenever I got the physical copy, I reread it like the next day.
Yeah.
And everything hits so much better. It's kind of like the difference between reading Junji Ito digitally than physically, because that page turn is important. But instead of for horror, it's more for like grandeur. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Yeah. All right, let's talk about individual issues. Superman, or individual chapters, because
so you're gonna have to listen because I remember all the chapters. I feel like I'm gonna fuck up in which order they're in.
Yeah.
So you're gonna have to start that discussion.
Yeah. So the stuff with Superman and Lois, right?
Lois.
Lois. It's okay. I love how paranoid she gets in like the Fortress of Solitude.
Oh yeah, no, because she starts freaking out.
Yeah.
And she's like, "There's no way this is real. Like, I'm gonna be studied on capture because." Isn't the whole thing that there was, like, some leak from an experiment that caused her to go all paranoid? Yeah.
Yeah.
Because I remember she, like, walked into a room, and it had, like, a bunch of stuff involving her, and it looked all, like, scary, and she's like, oh my god, I'm gonna get fucking tested on, and like, she's freaking out. And then later, whenever the paranoia stuff gets fixed, and, like, because that's where we find out that Superman has built a resistance from...
Kryptonite. Due to his little trip to the sun.
Yeah, the Green Cave, his terminal sun cancer.
I can't believe that I can't believe that he had fucking sun cancer. Like, okay, so here's the deal, right?
Yeah. Well, they call it sun poisoning, but it's like...
It's definitely like super skin cancer.
Yeah. I say it's either that, or I like to think of it more as like sun AIDS, because like... Okay, well, because like the idea of cancer is that it's cells massively reproducing on an uncontrolled rate to the point that it kills you, usually from blocking blood.
But that's not what's happening.
Yeah, in this instance, there's so much solar radiation going into it that it's overcharging the cells and killing it, which that's basically kind
of what AIDS does.
Yeah, well, I mean, HIV/AIDS basically destroys your white blood cells over time, because like you don't necessarily die from HIV/AIDS. It's you get the flu while you have it, and you don't have enough white blood cells to stop you from dying from the flu.
Yeah.
But like,
to minorly jump ahead.
Sun AIDS.
Well, yeah, and also to minorly jump ahead, the tiny little dudes in his body are like, hey, yo, your white blood cells, we can't stop them from killing themselves.
Yeah, because it was happening, it was too fast of a process for them to do anything.
Yeah.
That's further down the line.
Yeah, so back to Lois's little adventure. I like how she's like, dude, all this fucking time, you have been lying to me. And Superman's like, don't you like the fact that your biases have been confirmed? And she's just like, you're not Clark.
Yeah, well, like, not only is she not Clark, because weren't they dating by this point? Like,
from
Clark
what I know, yeah. I think so that in this, she's like, I've been dating this oaf.
Yeah, she's like, I've been dating this oaf, this, like, cowardice man. And it turns out you're, like, the smartest, strongest person. And she talks about she has his biases, but, like, there was also a layer that she was talking about how, like, Lois Lane's supposed to be like the world's greatest journalist, right? The only person that rivals her is Clark Kent. That's like the whole thing. And like a lot of times she's just like, oh, fucking Clark Kent.
What a dumb bitch.
Yeah, he's a dumb bitch, but how's
fucking idiot.
He always ones up her on Superman related shit.
Yeah.
So she's like, I don't know, because I remember there was one point she was having like a minor existential crisis because she was like, I'm the world's greatest detective, and I couldn't even realize the man I've been fucking for the past few weeks
is Superman. Yeah. Like, well, shit. Because, well, think about that. Is that it's okay? So I'm not sure if you read the special stuff, like the after story stuff. You didn't. Okay, but there's some design stuff on how Frank Quietly draws Superman versus Clark, right? Yeah. And you and I have talked about this before, and it kind of fits into it. Is that like visually they're just different people in here. It's very much the Christopher Reeves. It's the Christopher Reeves Clark Kent Superman difference, right? Yeah. Where like Clark is all hunched over, he's wearing really baggy clothes, and he just kind of looks fat.
Yeah, I say the baggy clothes makes him look fat, which I'm pretty sure obviously is like, if we're looking out on like a storytelling point of view, it's definitely Superman doing that intentionally because Clark Kent's supposed to be the secret identity.
He's a farm kid.
Yeah, he's a farm kid who's just this like oaf that walks around and it's just kind of silly goofy, and him being like this like big overweight like scaredy pants is what gives him the great secret persona to like run off when there's danger to change into Superman.
Yeah, something stress ulcer.
Yeah, exactly. So like no one's going to think it's Clark Kent being Superman, which is why Lois had such a fucking hard time.
Yeah.
What I'm hearing is Superman's not just the smartest man in the world, he's also apparently the best fucking actor known to man.
Yeah. Well, yeah, because it's I dislike people being like, oh, the glasses is all it is. No, it's a lot more to that. It's Clark's personality. It's his movements and stuff, right? The glasses are just kind of the icing on the cake.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Well, I've heard that in some, and you can correct me because you know a lot more than me, but I also heard there was like some stories where like something about like kryptonite infused glasses that it gave people who looked at him with the glasses on a different like version of who he is.
So from what I know, I think what you're talking about is that I think it's the New 52 continuity where the glasses make his eyes look green.
Yeah, I think that's what it is.
Yeah. No, but like on top of that, like Lois is just like, how is this even possible? And then there's that part when they're eating on like the weird recreation of the Titanic where she's like, what about that time that like you gave Superman the key to the city? And he's like, oh, that was Batman.
Yeah.
And like he's like, well, what about this time? I'm like, it was a robot. And he's like, and she's just like wrapping her head around it. And like for a brief second, you're like, why can't you just fucking believe this? But whenever you look back, like we said at the artwork, you're like, oh no, that makes sense.
Yeah.
Like, I think one of my favorite little things in the issue right before that, for like the epilogue of that issue, is whenever he bumps into the guy to save him from like a falling light fixture.
Yeah.
Which I think is super cool. I kind of like it whenever he's still kind of Superman, even in the Clark Kent disguise. But yeah, I love the little paranoia thing where she's like, what's going on? Like,
what's happening?
She's like, am I about to be a breeding cow to one Kal-El of Krypton? But like, yeah, I just love that reveal at the end of that issue, where she's like, I gotta arm myself, and she shoot him with the kryptonite gun. He's like, oh, that's a weird way to learn I'm immune to kryptonite.
Me when plot convenience. Tee.
Yeah, I mean, it's actually not.
I would say it's not like it doesn't work.
Yeah, no, it's actually not a bad way to show that he's kind of immune to green kryptonite, especially since they say specifically green kryptonite, because that's gonna matter in the next major chapter. Yeah. But I kind of like that his birthday gift is just like, you want to be me for a day? You know, I just think it's kind of cool.
That definitely doesn't have any foreshadowing.
No, it's an isolated thing in this chapter.
It never comes back.
Never comes back again.
Yeah, absolutely.
No. How'd you feel about the weird little mirror that's like, oh, here's future me's?
Yeah, well, I figured that's kind of leeway into the future, like the chapter, like 2 or 3 chapters from now, whenever he goes back in time. Which, like, as I said, it, like, I don't know, maybe for me, because I like overanalyzing, because it's like, I don't mind that he has a bunch of weird gizmos and stuff that's unexplained. Like, I don't need a detailed explanation of how he sees future Supermans or like these space guns. Yeah. But I just find it weird that like there's no device that's like, yeah, you can go back in time. And then he just does.
Yeah. See, so
it also is never mentioned in any of the other chapters, because I feel like all the other chapters are
it's like, got a healthy amount of foreshadowing.
Yeah, all the chapters have a healthy amount of foreshadowing, and I feel like they're all kind of cohesive. But I feel like that one is just isolated by itself.
Yeah. Well,
I'll talk about that.
Yeah, we'll talk about it when we get to that one. But that one hit me this time more than it did last time. But we'll talk about that later. I really like that his idea is, for a birthday present, is to let someone see the world through his eyes, right? It's interesting because Superman sees the world wholly, right? His powers let him see the beauty of the world entirely. And if I was Lois Lane, I would not want a better birthday gift than like that ability. Coincidentally, we are recording this on my birthday. So when am I getting Superman's powers?
Never.
Shit!
If you can hear things like miles away.
Oh no, I'd hate it.
Yeah, because like think about how much you would hear at once. Like he had to have learned how to be a selective.
That's why.
Without being like a weird person, this is the first thought in my head. He has to be hearing all of Metropolis's like intimate moments.
No, for sure. That's why I think my favorite scene from Man of Steel, a film I famously don't like all that much, is when he's in class and his like super senses are taking over. Because a lot of times how they explain it, right, is that he focuses.
Yeah.
That's how they explain it in Superman and Lois, is that he's trained himself to only focus on what matters, right? And I like that. But like My thing is, I'm glad it's not in here, but it'd be so funny if there was a scene of her being overwhelmed by the senses.
Yeah.
Because that's definitely something that you have to get used to, right?
Yeah.
But that leads us on to the next chapter. I think it's called, like, Superwoman for a Day or something. It's a good one. Where she gets to be Superwoman, which I like that. That's a little callback, fun fact, to whenever she was Superwoman in the 70s. 70s and 80s during the, 60s and 70s during the Golden Age. Or Silver Age of comics, because something, this obviously has a lot of influence from the Silver Age with some of the wacky shit. I like that, you know? I don't know, it's such a good thing, because, like, Lois is like, oh, this is fun. And then Superman is like, I'm so sorry that there is a fucking lizard invasion going on your birthday. And Lois is like, I would be mad if this didn't happen.
Yeah, well, like, what does he think that someone wants to be when they're Superman for a day? Just
what do they want to go fly around and go, that person's having sex, that person's having sex? What does he expect them to do?
Like, he's lucky that Lois Lane is, like, because I feel like
she craves adventure.
Yeah, well, she craves adventure, but, like, I think he's just lucky that someone that's, like, relatively, like, lighthearted, because it's, like, even good people who spent their entire life without that power, I feel like could easily be corrupted by that shit. Like,
oh, yeah, no.
He's lucky Lois Lane didn't go full, like, Homelander.
No. And she was like, I want to go fight some lizards. Like, no. I think my favorite part about that is that, while her birthday fun gets ruined by Samson, I wrote it down in my notes. I wrote down, I'm going to paraphrase because I didn't want to swear on my notes for some reason, and that is Samson and Atlas. These two motherfuckers. I said I love how Superman just finds Samson and Atlas bad news, just annoying. And they're like, dude, why are you here?
They are. They're kind of like the like, I don't know how to describe them. They're like the annoying dudes in high school.
Yeah.
Like, they just come around and you're just like, fuck.
Why are you here? Like, why are you here? Why are you talking?
Because it's not like they're bullies or anything. They're just like annoying.
Yeah, they're incels basically. Yeah,
they come through they're like
look at my beautiful feet. I have thrown the big red lizard prince into the air. Which reminds me, I love that part where like Lois is talking to Samson and Superman is like, oh, and his lungs just burst, and then leaves to go save him while they're talking. It's like a 2-3 panel little situation. He's like, "Yep, Krull's lungs just burst."
Yeah.
But like, yeah, no, they're weird, they're haughty, they're macho. What they remind me of, to bring it back to that influence thing, is they remind me of that time in Silver Age Superman where he was just kind of a weird jerk to Lois all the time. Like, all the covers would be shit. The one I remember looking at a comic shop in Metropolis, Illinois, with my parents when I was a kid, was one that was Superman and Lois in space, and he snaps her like oxygen tank, and the caption says, "Superman is trying to kill me because I won't marry."
Me AF.
And on a much lower situation, that's kind of how I see Samson and Atlas in this. Is they're the kind of guys that are like, how about I win you heart with my big rippling muscles and long flowing hair?
Me AF.
Yeah. But like, yeah, they're just shoving.
Now, like, I don't know, they were annoying, like, they
were annoying in a fun way.
Yeah, it was annoying in a fun way, because it's like, I fucking hated them, but I love that Superman just was, like, getting jealous and was, like, angry they were there.
It's humanity.
Yeah.
It's the humanity, and then he's like, look, can you guys please just leave? Yeah. I'm trying to do a cool thing for my girl. Like,
well, it finally gives more dimensions to Superman, because, like, I feel like if we didn't have that scene, it would just be Superman just being, like...
a paragon.
Yeah, a paragon. And
which, like, I like Paragon Superman, but it's kind of nice to have that little moment.
I want to see Superman get mad and angry, because it makes him more human.
Yeah, it does. One of the things we plan on reading in the future, though not for a while, Superman for All Seasons, is a very good piece of, like, human Superman. But, like, I kind of love the stuff, like they're down there, like, talking to the weird, like, underground lizard people, and Superman's, like, talking to the Lizard King. He's like, I'm so sorry for my son. We know about your great feats, you know. And Samson is just like, hey, Lois, look at these sick-ass fucking jewels.
Literally.
It's literally that. Or how Atlas, before, he's like, they're like, oh, how about feats of strength to see who Lois gets to spend her day with? And Samson's like, I took out the Prince Lizard, and Atlas is like, I took out the army. Your turn, dumbass.
Which is funny because, like, the end of the chapter where they're doing their little, like,
arm wrestling. Yeah.
I fucking love that scene.
Yeah.
That's probably my favorite scene of the chapter.
So how'd you feel about the Sphinx? Like, the weird, like Adam Hotep, I think it was called, with the Sphinx and stuff. Because Samson gives Lois the like weird like uranium jewels, and Superman's like, yo, careful, that is very dangerous radiation, and Lois is like, relax, I'm Superwoman right now.
And then
she gets stuck in that weird state of life and death.
Yeah, and then the motherfucker comes out of like nowhere too.
Yeah,
or at least it felt like nowhere.
I'll tell you, it's much weirder whenever you're not like when you're reading it digitally because there's no page turn.
Yeah.
I need to specify just how powerful that page turn is because it makes things feel oddly more coherent. I really like. To get back on track, I really like him like this like immortal Sphinx thing that Samson and Atlas are like, hey man, can you deal with this? That's kind of why we came back here.
Yeah, no, like they admit that like even though they're trying to like upfront Superman in front of Lois Lane, right as soon as she's like alive, both alive and dead, and she can't hear him, they're like, please,
I know, it's amazing. They're little like
they're little bitch boys. That's
I know. They're like bravado just like disappears, and what I like about that is right before it, Samson's like, look man, I'm a time traveler, and pulls out the Superman dead like newspaper. He's like, you don't got much longer, buddy, all's fair in love and war, and puts it back in, and then immediately like grovel to him like little children, because they can't fight the Sphinx by themselves.
Yeah, they're scared of the Sphinx. Which, like, I forget, how does that entire thing, like, end up? Isn't it like he's like, I'll free Lois if you answer this riddle?
Yeah, it's one of Superman's feats, which is one of the things that Samson mentions, is he's got like 12 feats that he has to do, right?
I remember him being drawn with 2.
It was 12.
Yeah, but like, he walks on 2 feet.
This was a mistake.
For real.
So basically what it is that like the Sphinx has to he has to answer the Sphinx's unanswerable question, which it's a little bit of an Isaac Newton pondering, aka what happens when an unstoppable force meets an immovable object. And they've got this really cool thing with the panels where it's like Superman Lois, right?
Yeah.
And it's just like it kind of gives that feeling of like the dun 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 dun, where like every single like beat it changes, and then it's just they surrender, which is such a cool answer.
Yeah.
And it's what's insane is that it feels like it's not even the right answer, because what does the Sphinx say specifically? Is acceptable. It says acceptable.
Yeah, I remember that panel because I felt like it was the wrong answer too, but like with kind of like the dun 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 thing, I feel like a lot of this chapter with like the article of Superman being dead, because obviously like a lot of the whole thing is like Superman like doing the last stuff he wants to do before he dies, but I feel like almost a lot of the chapters represent like the 5 stages of grief.
Okay.
To an extent, and I feel like this was him accepting that he's dying.
Okay.
Was this chapter, because he sees the thing about him dying. He's coming to terms that Lois might have to like find another man when he's dead.
Oh, and keep in mind at this point, text-wise, it's not guaranteed he's gonna die, because in the first chapter, Leo Quintum, which I know we didn't explain earlier, but basically Superman flew too close to the sun, something Icarus metaphor, to save some researchers, including a guy named Leo Quintum, who we're going to see a lot in this, and we're going to mention him a lot. And Leo Quintum, Dr. Quintum's like, okay, we're going to try and find a cure.
Yeah, because Quinton is like the head of like a genetics
project. Called Projects. And like he, in the first issue, they go through a whole bunch of different things. Like, here's our Bizarro workers and our Underverse research and our weird motherfuckers who are designed to do one thing and one thing only.
Yeah, no, I find it funny that we're 30 minutes into this and we just
now
realized we did not talk about the first chapter. Yeah, no, to give it short and sweet real quick, Quinton's a part of a genetic team that is trying to, like, they're coming with a bunch of projects, including one that they explain after this all happens, was the idea of getting Superman's genomes in case there's a point where there is no longer Superman. Mm-hmm. And the reason he's entrapped in the sun is that
they're trying to get a scoop of the sun.
Yeah, because Lex Luthor convinced everyone that he was a good guy.
Which we will fucking get to Luthor.
Yeah, but like basically it's the book starts off with Luthor, everyone realizing he's not a good guy, and he's using the sun to basically terrorize Earth for profit reasons. Mm-hmm. But in reality, he has the alternative motive of giving the sun poisoning to Superman, so he can finally be the guy who kills Superman.
Yeah, but like we were saying, at that point, it's not even guaranteed that Superman's gonna die.
Yeah, because Quentin says he's gonna try to find a cure.
But then Samson shows up with the article, and it's like, It's kind of foreshadowing because you're like, oh, Leo, like Quintum said that he was gonna find a cure.
Yeah, but it says that he's dead.
Yeah.
But then you also put on the thing that, like, one of the things Quinn says he needed to find a cure was to break down and understand, like, the Kryptonian genome.
Yeah.
Which Superman literally does on his own. That's why he's able to create this Superman for a day serum for...
Exactly. Like he already does it, which I think is also super interesting. But, like it's just... It's really interesting that, like, it's Superman kind of coming to acceptance that may not be the person in Lois's life anymore, which I think is really interesting. Yeah. As well as it's just really sweet that he gives Lois the perfect gift. That part where he's like, there's this thing I've always wanted to do with you after this part, because right after this...
Yeah, with Samson, they go to the moon.
Yeah, they go to with Samson and Atlas. They have a fun little...
we're getting the arm wrestling.
I know, we almost forgot the arm wrestling competition, where Superman just straight up breaks Samson's arm, and Atlas is like...
Yeah, shaking, and then, like, everything behind him splits in half because of Superman's power.
And then that's when they leave. And before Samson and Atlas leave our purview... there's that part right before the Ultra Sphinx thing where they do the little dick measuring thing where they're like, she looked at my belt buckle, and Samson's like, mine's bigger. What I realized whenever I first read that flew over my head because I'm a child, right?
Yeah.
But the second time I'm like, Samson's not wearing a belt. They're talking about their penises. What fucking weirdos. I love Grant Morrison so much. Anytime there's going to be a Grant Morrison thing on this show, you're just going to hear me gushing about it, man.
Yeah, no, but, like, the Sphinx scene, before we move on to, we're starting to talk about the moon scene. Mm-hmm. The Sphinx scene, I think that was, like, the ultimate, like, this is where we need to accept that Superman's dying, because you get the foreshadowing of the article. But then the whole, like, unmovable object
and like unstoppable force
and unmovable object. I like to see it as like the unmovable object is death.
Yeah.
And the unstoppable force is Superman.
Which is why the answer is they surrender.
Yeah, because like Superman is that unstoppable force. Like no one's been able to beat him. Like he's been harmed and stuff with like kryptonite and all that, but like to this point, they even talk about how he's the unstoppable man. He's the Kryptonian that can do anything.
He's the Man of Steel. Yeah, he's the Man of Tomorrow, which is exactly. I like the name the Man of Tomorrow in this because tomorrow's not going to come for him.
Yeah, and it's like so you have that aspect, and then like death is finally reaching him because that's kind of the contrast. It's a man that's so super that it's blowing people's minds that he is nearing death, and I think to almost an extent it's him too. Mm-hmm. And it's him kind of like, to put it shortly, I think it's like the ultimate humanistic thing to do, because I think ultimately the death is just a part of life.
Yeah,
like you can't be living without dying, and I think that's what separates Superman into being less of like an alien god and more on the human aspect of things, is that he does die in this.
Yes.
Or dies, yeah.
Well, we'll get to it.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah, I forgot. I just opened up my copy because I wanted to make... I forgot about this. Greek hero, Atlas at Lois Party. Atlas scores.
Oh, I didn't even remember
With his two broken-ass arms? Yeah, no. So I don't want to spend too much time on this. I just want to mention the moon scene real quick. Because the moon scene is really nice. Because he's like, oh, there's this thing I've always wanted to do. And it's a single page of Superman and Lois kissing on the moon, which is fantastic artwork, first and foremost. Second, Lois butt. Third,
Dick hard.
Third, I just think that's so cute. Like, he's a big goofball. And we see, not to spoil, I
like how you said spoil as if we're not trying to like summarize every single
Not
chapter.
Just summarize, but just like talk. I don't want to spend too much time summarizing. I want to spend a lot of time like explaining.
Well, yeah, not summarizing, but like I'm sure we're gonna talk about the ending of the book.
Yeah, no, but like it's cute because later, in a couple issues later, we see Superman and Krypto hanging out on the moon. It's literally my call background.
Yeah.
On my phone. But yeah, no, it's just really good. And then the last page of it, I should have kept this open. The last page of it is just Lois slowly falling asleep while she's stuff like, oh, the serum's starting to wear off. I can't smell the trees in Canada, which I think is so cute. And she's like, oh, I can't see those beautiful radio waves. Because we get to see how Superman sees things. It's great. And then, what do you think? Do you think he's about to tell her that he's dying?
Yeah, I do think he's about to tell her that he's dying.
Because that's what I think it is too.
I have something I need to tell you. And then she's like,
right on his fucking arm. Honestly, it's a great issue. How do you feel? This is the one I don't think we're going to talk too much about. How do you feel about the Jimmy Olsen chapter? I think it's just dumb 60s fun. It reminds me so much of... Because that's basically what it's based off, is Superman's pal Jimmy Olsen
I think a lot of it is I think it's foreshadowing because that's the first chapter we learn about, like, well, not necessarily, I don't know if it's talked about in other Superman comics because I don't read things, but in this particular story, this is the first time we hear about the Underverse.
From what I know, the Underverse is an All-Star exclusive thing.
Okay, because this is the first time we hear about the Underverse is in this chapter, and then I feel like the whole Jimmy Olsen chapter, where with the Black Kryptonite, kind of foreshadows, because we hear about all of his feats, and one of the feats that we heard about is he's the only person ever to escape the Underverse. So we're kind of getting foreshadowed with what the Black Kryptonite does, since it's the Kryptonite from the Underverse. What's going to happen whenever he does do the Underverse.
The plot of this issue is basically Jimmy Olsen gets to be Leo Quintum for a day for one of his articles, and in classic fashion, Superman has to save him. And we'll get to it in a minute. Jimmy Olsen gets to save Superman, and it's so cool. How do you feel about the Black Kryptonite? I thought that was fun. I genuinely think that is such dumb Silver Age bullshit of the different types of kryptonite.
This is definitely one of the chapters, in my opinion, that like it is definitely more for fun, because I feel like it ultimately has like the least impact on the story outside of that mini foreshadowing of the Black Kryptonite. Because I feel like the Black Kryptonite, even though it was just like a fun little chapter of like, haha, Jimmy Olsen saved Superman for once, it's very much like the Black Kryptonite is the biggest foreshadowing on later in the story.
For sure.
Like, well, one of them. These past two chapters, Lois Lane and Jimmy Olsen are definitely like the biggest foreshadowers of the story of.
So for me, they're very much the grounded aspect of Superman, right?
Yeah.
Because Lois Lane has the love of Superman, the love of Clark, so he keeps him grounded. That's why a lot of times she's used as a symbol for humanity in movie adaptations and stuff, right? Jimmy Olsen, there's this beautiful tweet, right? Because obviously, at the time of recording, there's a lot of news about James Gunn's involvement in new DC projects, right? And someone said we should really get something Jimmy Olsen related, because the tweet said, while Superman is Batman's best friend, Jimmy Olsen is Superman's best friend. Which, first off, banger tweet. Second, banger. Second, we really see that in this, right? I don't know if he says it, but I always get this feeling with this issue that
Jimmy Olsen never finds out that Superman's Clark Kent, does he?
It depends. So in current...
Well, I'm talking about this one in particular.
No. Yeah.
That's what I thought. Because at some points, there was like some panels where like the way he talked, I was like, does he know? Because I feel like that's a thing, if you look deeper into the dialogue, that they're trying to make you like wonder if Jimmy Olsen like secretly knows the whole time.
Yeah.
Because that would also add in an interesting fact of maybe Jimmy Olsen's a better investigator than Lois Lane.
Lois Lane.
Yeah. Who is, slept with Superman several times and never knew.
Yeah, how can you fuck Clark Kent not realize? It's even worse in Superman and Lois, because in Superman and Lois, it is text that she likes Clark more than Superman. And I assume they've had sex in that time frame, and Clark's not just a virgin until they get married.
I am real.
No, so I really like it because I just double checked the pages, and I don't think he actually says it. But in this, it very much gives off the vibe of Superman saved me a million times, it's my turn to save Superman. Because basically what happens is that some stuff breaks, a bridge over like the Underverse mining rig breaks, and Jimmy almost falls in. He presses the Superman watch. Of course, Superman's like, my pal Jimmy Olsen, I gotta go get him. And there's the foreshadowing of he's like, I will get that interview with Lex Luthor on your desk on Friday, Perry. And he goes to go save him.
Yeah, and he's like, oh no, my oven is
I left my oven on. You fucking dumbass. All I can imagine is Perry White being like, you fucking dumbass.
Only in a fantasy comic book would I ever be able to leave work because I left my oven on. I'm pretty sure my job would let my house burn down before I would leave work early.
Exactly. So he does that, and then it's Black Kryptonite. So basically what they get out of the Underverse is Black Kryptonite, which basically makes Superman like an inverse of himself.
Yeah.
So what Jimmy Olsen does is he uses...
no foreshadowing in that.
No, there's definitely no, especially whenever he starts talking like a Bizarro person.
Yeah,
there's totally no foreshadowing.
No foreshadowing.
No, it is a self-contained story.
I would actually argue there's not even 3 shadowing in this.
Dude, not even a single 4th shadow.
Real.
So basically there's like 3 super weapons designed to defeat Superman. And isn't it like the first one gets destroyed, the second one will send him to the Phantom Zone?
Yeah.
And they're like...
He's like, there has to be a third option.
Yeah, and the third option is what we see early on. What we see before is when he's like kind of like doing the I was projects director for a day, where he's like, I want to go through that door. And Agatha, Quentin's assistant, is like, no.
Yeah.
And the door says, don't open until Doomsday, right? Because it's literally, it's a Doomsday injection. And he gets to save Superman as Doomsday. I'll tell you one thing. I was not expecting a Doomsday cameo in this comic.
Yeah, no, I wasn't either. Because, like, even when it said, wait, like, for Doomsday, my brain didn't even register it as Doomsday. I registered it as, like, the idea, because before, Quentin was talking a lot about, like, what are we going to do when Superman's gone? So, in my mind, Doomsday would be no more Superman.
Yeah, but instead, it's the Doomsday Serum, which I love. I love how like, after he defeats Superman, I wanna breeze past this one, because I like this one, but I don't feel like there's a lot to talk about. And we'll talk about some of the stuff that you talked about philosophically much later on. In fact, I have no clue how long this fucking recording is going to be.
Man, who cares about how long it is?
2 hours talking about Superman? That's literally my wet dreams.
Just put a lo-fi beat over this, and someo's gonna listen to it while they're at work.
I'll put a lo-fi, like, Animal Crossing beat behind us.
For real?
Yeah, I'm gonna listen to this at work.
For real?
Yeah, no, I love that you, like, are just walking around my apartment living room because you can't sit still.
I am a man with a silly, goofy learning disability that drank a venti cold brew from Starbucks.
We were at
I am not able to sit down.
We were at Barnes & Noble before this, and his ass got a coffee right before we left to come record.
I was tired.
Yeah, I just love that it's goofy fun, and how, like, at the very start, his girlfriend's like, that's it, Olsen. We're through. And then at the very end, she's like, I never doubted it for a second. Hey, Jimmy, find a new woman.
I do like that the chapter with Jimmy Olsen starts where it's like, Jimmy Olsen, worst dressed man of the year.
And then he's just like, 50,000 coats, and they're all the same. No, he saves him, and the guys, and he says to the guys next to him, he's like, nobody can see that Superman looks like this. We need to fix this. And the guy's like, can we get your autograph?
Literally.
And Agatha is like, you overblew our budget for the quarter. And he's like, no, I didn't. I checked it before we left. It literally has an infinity sign next to net revenue.
Yeah, because they're like, how the frick frack do you know that? And he was like, no firewall can stop Jimmy Olsen.
Yeah. I feel like Jimmy Olsen would stumble into nuclear codes.
I like how the man literally, like, right after all this went down, he immediately wrote the story on the event to cover it as Superman saves town from Doomsday. So that way, any damage caused by Superman during the Black Kryptonite event
can be blamed on Doomsday. Yeah, which is super cool. I like that. It's a nice little selfless moment. And he gets the girl in the end, which is sick. Jimmy Olsen confirmed W. Frankly, what is it, the line that Perry says? Half of them want to be you, half of them hate you, and then another half that wants to date you. And he says, and Jimmy Olsen says, quote, that's 3 halves, Chief, and all of them are guys.
Literally.
So
the only time I care for Jimmy Olsen is in All-Star Superman.
Honestly, I am an unabashed Jimmy Olsen fan.
He's just a silly little fruit.
He's just a silly little guy. Okay, so the next one, as I look at this, is actually the one that is actually, congratulations, we get to talk about Luthor now.
Jeff Bezos.
Because the next one is called The Gospel According to Lex Luthor. So this is the prison break
gospel,
one.
Yeah.
So I want to open it in order, because basically this one is it's the interview with Lex Luthor and then a prison escape because of a riot, basically, and Parasite.
Kinda.
But it opens, I have my finger on it, where the judge over his proceeding is like, oh, here's 4 of the shittiest people imaginable: Attila the Hun, Genghis Khan, Al Capone, Adolf Hitler. The judge is like, you consider these people your greatest inspirations. And I'm like, that's a bit harsh, isn't it? And then I read the rest of the story and I'm like, no, that's correct.
Yeah.
He is just this is just an unforgivable Luthor in this, right?
Yeah.
This is all the conversations.
I don't know, Lex Luthor I really like as, like, the way they made him as a villain this, because, like, one of the things, I thought about this after we had talked about, like, the last chapter, like, a few days ago at work, but I was thinking about this, and, like, I feel like All-Star Superman is ultimately a book about contrast.
Okay.
And I feel like there's always, like, 2 points that you constantly contrast. Kind of like earlier when I was talking about, like, the idea of, like, the unstoppable force of Superman versus the unmovable object of death, and they surrender. Like, there's kind of like a contrary between, like, him being this super alien being, but he's human enough to die at the end.
Yeah.
I feel like Lex is also just a contrast to Superman in general, because, like, there's so much just, like, shit that goes on, especially in this book, that it's, like, kind of like what we talked.
This chapter alone, like
he could have been, like, the savior of humanity, but he chooses not to, because ultimately he just wants to be better than everyone, and his ego is so large.
Yeah, a lot of it
needs a Superman to exist, so that way he has something to contrast him.
Like, he says during the trial, he's like, Superman should be on trial. Superman made me do it, right? And he gets charged with crimes against humanity. And you know what the weirdest thing is? And I'll show you as you're standing next to me. After he gets the verdict being death, he fucking smiles.
Yeah.
He's proud of himself, right?
Yeah. Well, because to him, everyone's wrong besides him.
Yeah.
So, like, to him, a society that wants to see him dead is a fucking appraisal to him, because he'd rather be dead.
His biases.
Yeah, he'd rather be dead. Like, a society that wants him dead is because it's a society that praises Superman.
Yeah, and I think it's even better whenever we get to the part of the interview with Clark Kent, because there's so much characterization in that interview, right?
Yeah.
And stuff like how he's not answering Clark's questions. He makes fun of his shorthand.
Yeah.
And I like how there's the part where he sees everything as as like a challenge or an obstacle. That with the shorthand thing specifically, he's like, note to self, learn shorthand.
Yeah.
The fuck does that mean? It's not a second language.
Yeah.
Like,
well, that's the thing on why I see it as much of like a contradiction, because, like, every single thing Luthor does, Superman or / Clark Kent in this entire story somehow does, like, the opposite, in my opinion. Like, even down to the T of, in that interview with him, whenever he's just standing there talking, and he talks about, for instance, one of the first contradictions between the two. Lex Luthor's talking about, like, I'm not some alien boy that was gifted with power. I'm here on this treadmill lifting weights every day so I can be my best. And that's why I fucking hate Superman. Because ultimately, he does have, like, a gifted mind.
Yeah, no, he was also blessed with his intellect.
He was blessed, but that goes to another kind of point, in my opinion, because, like, it's almost the opposite for Superman. Like, yeah, he's right. Superman was just given super strength and all that, but, like, he had to train to become highly intelligent through, like, all of his adventures.
He had to learn how to be Superman.
While Lex Luthor was the opposite. He was born Lex Luthor. He had to train to become strong.
Yeah.
And that's where, like, I feel like the contradiction starts starting, especially with the fact that, like, one of the main points on, like, intelligence with Superman is how observant he is and how much he goes on studying, while Lex Luthor just bounces on the fact that he's already intellectual, because the whole chapter, it's just Lex Luthor not even realizing that if he used his mega brain of his,
for longer than 30 seconds,
he could realize that Clark Kent's Superman.
Yeah.
But he chooses to ignore it over his own narcissism.
Like, there's this part...
Like, that would never pass Superman.
Exactly. There's even this part, like, that I'm looking at right now, where there's a little electrical, outage, and Clark comes in and saves Luthor from being electrocuted.
Yeah.
Right? And one thing I realized that on this reread, I noticed a lot of stuff I didn't notice before, including how in this there's a little spark on the panels that show the outlet, right? I think it's super cool. But, like, even just kind of like how he sees it, he goes, you know, if there was no Superman, maybe Lois Lane would pay attention to you. You know what I mean? He tries to appeal to what he sees as a selfish person, right? Because how I see Luthor sees people is he sees them as like himself, inherently selfish and narcissistic.
Yeah.
Which is why
the entire
whenever
time
he talks about like Clark versus Superman, he's like, maybe if there was no Superman, she'd notice you. You're decently handsome. You're a big oaf. You're a farmhand. Perfect for a cynical city girl to fix.
Yeah.
As if Clark needs fixing.
Yeah. Well, that's kind of the thing, because in the whole interview, he talks about how, like, he could fix society, and society better with Superman.
He could cure all diseases.
Yeah, but this is a very broad, like, it's like a promise, almost. It's a promise that never happens.
Yeah.
And instead of, like, whenever people ask the why, like, or, like, how, like, they ask the how question, he always changes it to just personal desire. So, like, he's like, oh, society would be better without Superman. Okay, how would it be better? Oh, I could cure all diseases. How? Oh, maybe Lois Lane would pay attention to you instead. Like,
no. Instead of getting down to the nitty gritty of, oh, I can use my immense wealth to do things to better humanity, and when Clark kind of challenges it on him, he's like, you're decently attractive. Why doesn't Lois Lane fuck you?
Yeah.
You know?
Well, it's insane because, like, well, one, I just find it weird that everyone has this general consensus that Lois Lane's dating Superman when it was previously established that she was dating Clark Kent before he revealed that he was Superman, Lois Lane, and this is clearly in the future. Mm-hmm. But, like, my main thing is it's like Lex Luthor is so narcissistic throughout this story that there's Lex Luthor, the Lex Luthor in his head, and the Lex Luthor that everyone views. Yeah. Like, there's, like, 3 different Lexes going on at the same time, which is, like, really interesting.
No, I love how in this, while he's working out and stuff, he, 1, throws the fucking weight at Clark, and 2, he's like, feel my muscle, which is not something a well-adjusted person.
Yeah.
No, that's so narcissistic.
He is, by definition, ego lifting.
Yeah.
Like, that is...
He's doing it for his own personal reasons, his own, like, personal selfish reasons beyond health. He's gonna die. He doesn't need to fucking, like, things. Oh, yeah.
Well, it's because from, like, he even says from step 1 he had been thinking about ways to escape. Because, like, in that chapter, he could have escaped, but he chooses not
he could have escaped at any time.
Because he has this grand plan.
Yeah. He has to be in prison. It's a weird thing. But, like, I like how he even has to bask in the reality of him killing Superman. Because he asks, how's Superman these days? Does he look pale or sickly? And Clark is like, he's fine. You know, he's like, I think, he's like, I did the one thing no one else has been able to do. I killed Superman.
Yeah, see, here's the thing. He hates Superman so much, but he doesn't
He's too busy sucking the dick of fighting him.
Well, the thing is that, like, he doesn't kill Superman because he hates him. He doesn't kill Superman because he hates him. He doesn't kill Superman because he thinks it's better for society. He just wants to be the one person that does what no one else can.
Like, realistically, in this story, if, say, Doomsday Olsen from the previous chapter had killed Superman, he would have just revived Superman to kill him.
Yeah, he would either revive Superman or he would absolutely be devastated. Yeah. Because Lex Luthor ultimately... Because, like, if he ultimately, like, hated Superman... Well, like, he does. But, like, someone who hates something, right? They would be happy if it ended by any means. Like, if Doomsday killed Superman, fucking any other, like, major villain in DC history killed Superman, this Lex Luthor would have been fucking devastated because he wasn't the one to do it. Because ultimately, him killing Superman is an ego trip. It's not because he ultimately thinks he needs to kill Superman.
It's what matters to him, right?
Yeah. What matters to him is that he's the one who did it.
Yeah. How do you feel about his little speech about the fucking prison? And he's just like, in this page where it's like the weird double parade spread, where he's like, look at these fucking bitches. Look, they just need order. They just need someone to take over. What does he say? A more hostile environment known to man. They can feel the change. Shit like that. Oh my god. As I'm looking at the book right now, like, I love his little, like, oh, I can tame these beasts, like, conversation about it. Because he basically has.
Yeah.
Like, and obviously the super genius is going to convince a bunch of people that they should follow him. He's a billionaire.
He's a billionaire?
He's been doing that the majority of his professional career.
Yeah. Well, like...
It's not a challenge, even if he thinks it is.
Well, the thing is that he boasts it up as a challenge, so he feels better about doing it. Because ultimately, these are just hopeless, aimless people who are going to follow someone that pays them money. Like, that's the whole premise of goons in, like, comics. But instead, he needs to describe them as these, like, lowly, degenerate monsters. He has to villainize and monsterize these prisoners who are very easy to be persuaded because to him that's a grander feat. Yeah. And to him, all that matters is that what he does is a grand feat. Exactly. Which is why he doesn't escape. It's below him.
This is why I wanted to get to the Olsen chapter as quickly as possible. Because I think this is going to be the good one. Parasite's a big purple guy.
Yeah, and that's the instance where I'm like, if Lex Luthor was such a fucking super genius, because he's clouded, and this is another thing where like the compare and contrastion of like the whole story comes in, because Superman, so like kind of like what we talked about with the Icarus statement, right? Superman literally flew too close to the sun and got sun poisoning. Lex Luthor metaphorically flies too close to the sun, because that's the whole thing, is that he is so entrapped in his own hubris that if he would have like analyzed the situation for my 5 seconds, because the whole thing about Parasite is that he gets bigger and like with a bigger power source, and even Clark Kent within like a few seconds is like, he's getting bigger because I'm here, because I'm Superman.
Yeah, because what he says is, what if Superman's passing by? Because he asks, he's like, why isn't he behind lead shielding?
Yeah,
you know, because it's the Parasite. And I like that Lex, that little flew too close to the sun metaphor. He's like, he's on his way back from the infirmary. What's the problem if he drains a toaster or something on the way back to his cell?
Yeah.
Right?
But he's not just draining a toaster.
He's draining Superman just from him being nearby.
Yeah. The person who's like, I don't know, like a giant solar powered generator.
Yeah. And what's insane is that
who's overcharged, which is what's killing him.
I don't know if it's changed in other continuities, but the most visible version of the Parasite I'm aware of is Superman the Animated Series, where he had to touch to steal powers. But in the Silver Age, not only did he be able to touch people, just being around him would suck your powers away. And that's like what he has. He has the Silver Age thing. But he's also just a big purple man with a big old mouth.
Yeah. Real.
But like, I like how like, so the Parasite like incites a prison riot by accident, mind you, because, you know, he's gone apeshit from the power that he's getting. And it causes a prison riot.
Lex Luthor just walks around like this is an average fucking
he walks around with his fucking hands behind. He literally does. He walks around with his hands behind his back like a fucking scientist. He's literally wearing a lab coat the entire time. Like, he's sitting there like, oh, this is just what happens. It's chaos, you know?
Yeah. Big purple guy getting bigger, that's normal. We must just have more toasters than normal.
Or how Clark runs towards the tear gas because there's people that are in danger, because he's gonna quickly save all the guards and like the prisoners and shit.
Yeah, because when they like pass a room that's rioting, doesn't he like secretly like freeze breath them?
Yes. Actually, hang on. Right there. Yeah. No, or how he pretends that his glasses are broken and that he can't see from the tear gas to stop Luthor from getting hit by a guy.
He lets Luthor get hit?
Stops Luthor from getting hit.
Oh, he stops Luthor from getting hit?
No, or I like how he's secretly using his powers to like get it through, and you know, Luthor's still talking about dumb shit. And
that's what I'm saying. He's too busy thinking and talking about himself for him to even notice that Clark Kent is being Superman right in front of him.
Yeah, like it's great. Or I think one of my favorite things that happens is that like he's like not only is he still kind of like, oh, you're fit to, you know, he's like, yo, I'm better than all these people. Luthor's like, I'm better than all these people. And, you know, he gets his biases confirmed whenever, like, the prisoners are like, oh, you're right, you prove that you're right to lead us. And he shoots the Parasite. And Clark's like, whoa, what are you doing? You're just making him stronger. And Luthor gets proven right because he's like, you ever heard of eating too much, Kent? And then Parasite just crashes into the floor. And then Luthor, he's like beating the shit out of him. And he's like, this is what happens when you mess with Lex Luthor. Because he's just a bully. Yeah. He's just a little man that has power.
You know, he's literally like Napoleon syndrome in a person.
Yeah.
Like, he just is narcissistic and thinks that he's better than everyone and he has to tower over everyone at any cost.
We're going to skip ahead in this issue to whenever Clark escapes. Because I love the stupid, like, oh, did you know that my little bot can read Charles Dickens at such a volume that it creates a tunnel to leave? And it's just so funny and stupid and dumb, right? But I think my favorite part about it is that Clark's trying to leave and he's like, you're not coming with me, and he's like, why would I? Yeah. And then my favorite part is when I feel like the real Clark and Superman converge whenever he's like, you'll die like a mad dog in the yard, think straight.
Yeah.
Because, you know, because obviously Clark sees it from an objective standpoint, right?
Yeah.
You're not proving anything. you're gonna go to the electric chair and you also kill.
Yeah.
Whereas Luthor sees it as a great accomplishment that he killed Superman. He's going to the electric chair proud.
Yeah.
You know, I don't know. It's just honestly, it's a really good issue, and it really is a character study on Luthor.
I like that there's just the random character of whenever they leave the jail.
It's just a random like 18-year-old girl that's like, let's go.
I'm pretty sure it was established that that's his niece.
It is his niece. They establish it later.
Like, well, I'm pretty sure they establish it in that chapter too, because I'm pretty sure she calls him Uncle Luther.
Yeah. Oh no, I think she does. I don't remember.
So like, I just love that it's like, Clark Kent, you can leave on a boat with my emo niece.
Yes. My fucking the alt girl that I see at family reunions.
Excuse me, niece. Have you gone to Hot Topic recently?
How did you know, Uncle Luther? What do you mean?
I see you're on your 5th septum.
Yeah, no. It's just a really good character study on Luther, and honestly, I think it's the best written issue out of the majority of the book.
Yeah.
It's not my favorite. I would argue that the next chapter is one that hit me really hard recently, and that's the one. It's the one that we were talking about earlier, the Back in Time one, where it's flashes back to a younger Clark just starting out as Superman, and it's the day his dad dies, right?
Yeah.
I think that's a really good one. This fucking chapter is the one where the Supermen from the future come to fight a weird
like
monster.
Fifth-dimensional monster, yeah.
Yeah, but also like we get to see John Kent die. This one's really touching too, because it's kind of it's a spot in Superman's life where he's like, well, maybe I should stay in Smallville. Maybe I should just keep being a farmer. And Martha's like, well, you can't just be a farmer.
Yeah, like John didn't die for you to be a farmer. He knows that you're greater than that.
Yeah, but like, I think what's really good is we get some Lana Lang, we get some Pete Ross, and we get like that kind of conversation of them being like, Metropolis has changed you, but Clark's like, well, I don't think I feel like I'm in place in Metropolis, but I also don't feel like I'm in place in Smallville anymore.
Yeah.
You know, the Supermen of the future.
Yeah.
Those fuckers. They're so weird, but I love them.
They're so silly goofy.
Yeah. Or I love the little detail. That's probably one of my favorite things about like the Pa Kent Clark Kent relationship is they've got farmhands. Like Martha's like, oh yeah, he's hired farmhands, and Clark's like, you know, I could clear the season's yield in like 5 minutes, right? And she's like, you know how your dad likes to do it. He wants to do it the old-fashioned way. Which I think is even more ironic that the 3 people that he hired are Supermen and could also do it in like 30 seconds.
Yeah, no. I don't know. It was a very, like, touching chapter, because it's like, you know, Clark, because, you know, you end up realizing that the, like, unknown Superman
is just our Clark, the one that we see.
Yeah, our Clark, and not the actual unknown Superman that they talked about back in
earlier,
the Lois chapter.
Earlier, yeah. I think what I really like is the use of a younger Superman. We mentioned earlier the panel of Clark sitting with Krypto on the moon, right? A very lovely image, if I do say so myself. But like, I like how he's just talking with his friends about how it's early 20s shit. Like I don't know if this is where I'm supposed to be. I don't know if I'm supposed to be in Metropolis. Like, I know I'm studying to be a journalist, but
that's when he's, like, crushing on the one girl before Lois.
Yeah,
right?
Lana.
Because whenever he finds out it's, like, multiple generations Superman, he's like, I guess me and Lana got married and had kids.
I know!
Like, not what happened.
Which is funny, because she, like, drops the fuck out of his life after a certain point.
Yeah.
And in this, we don't see her again after this. Yeah, which is insane, because she's seen a lot in other stuff as well. Obviously, she's the main character in Superman and Lois. Other stuff. Smallville, of course. But, like, I just kind of like it because he's too focused on... Ironically enough, because after he meets the Supermen of the future and they're fighting the Chronovar, they're like, we'll handle this, go.
Yeah. Right?
And he's like, no. And I like how he's stubbornly like, I'm going to do the right thing, whether you stop me or not. And he gets into a fight with his, like, with a Superman of the future who is undeniably stronger than him. And he's still like, I'm doing the right thing, right? Because this is an early Superman who's young, and he's like, this is what I'm supposed to be doing, right?
Yeah.
He's stopping this thing from killing the threat in front of me. It's a Superman who early on just sees the threat in front of him.
Yeah.
Not the other things, right? And Calvin Elder, I think is what he calls himself, the Superman of like 5,000 years in the future, is like, these 2 minutes that we're eating up is, you're gonna miss your dad's death. And then we switch to a very touching moment where the unknown Superman, who at the end of the issue is revealed to be our Superman who's dying, is talking with them, and they're like, "Oh, the yield came in." Well, right. And I think at that point, John is like, "Oh, I know I'm gonna die. You know, I know you're my son." Basically, he doesn't say it, but it's kind of noticed because he asks, "What's gonna happen to the kid?" Talking about his own son, and the unknown Superman responds with, I think he responds with, "He's gonna do all right." I'll double check. Oh, yep, here it is. Yeah, he says he'll be okay, won't he, the boy? And the unknown Superman responds with, "It all comes out right." And then Calvin is like, "Yep, the 3 minutes you fight the Chronivore," which is what it is that they're fighting a creature called the Chronivore, which is like a weird thing it eats time. I think my favorite part is whenever Superman is like, "Oh, he's turning those cows into the burger they're gonna become."
Literally. Well, no, because it's one of those pride things. Well, I don't know if pride's the right way to put it. I guess it's more like hubris, where it's like he only sees the threat in front of him, and once when he because they're just like, "You want these minutes? Stop attacking this. You don't want this to go away." We can handle this. And it isn't until he's standing there and he hears John starting to die, he starts freaking out, and he's flying, crying, and he's like, "I can do both. I can save everything."
And he fails.
And he can't.
Yeah. Because one of the most important things in an adaptation for Superman is, ironically enough, John Kent's death. If you even are killing John Kent. The two most well-known adaptations of Superman do. That's 1978 and Man of Steel. One of them does it right, one of them does it wrong. Take a wild guess which one did it wrong. Anyways, so the important about that is that humbles Clark. It's a very humbling moment that you can't save everyone.
And you can't do everything.
You can't
even
do
if you
everything.
Are super.
Which is why it's important that he dies of a heart attack instead of something preventable.
Yeah.
Man of Steel. Exactly. Yeah. Something. He dies in a tornado that Superman could have eaten. No, Clark. Let me cook.
Hold on, Clark. Let me cook.
Put in future me. Put in the thing he keeps sending to me.
The meme. Add a vine boom in there.
One or two vine booms. Wait.
Now.
Yeah. But it's nice, and we get to see the eulogy, the double page spread, which is a weird, confusing use of a double page spread, but not in a bad way. Where he's just kind of he talks about how John, his father affected him, and then we get the reveal that the unknown Superman for us is our Superman, and he gets to see his dad one last time, which is sick. Because the reason why this one affected me on this reread is because recently my grandfather passed. And it's kind of an interesting little situation that whenever you have a loved one who's passed, how you kind of wish you could go back in time and say goodbye. And I think it's just great that Superman has the chance to. And what I think is poignant is that he doesn't try to save his dad.
Yeah.
He just talks to him.
Well, because he ultimately knows that if his dad didn't die, he would have turned into who he was.
Yeah, he would have never left Smallville for good. He would have never been the Superman we know, the one that we see, the one that is taking the bandages off. And I just think it's a really, really good issue. That it's very much, I feel like it's a good issue about the humanity of Superman.
Yeah.
Right? Just fantastic overall. Hey, do you remember that little, not at all foreshadowing about the Underverse from the Jimmy Olsen chapter?
Yeah.
What do you know? It comes into effect in this one.
Let's go.
Grant Morrison, you've done it again.
Yeah,
you've convinced me that that's what I've been waiting for. The Underverse chapter actually does mean something. So we're going to talk about Bizarro now. So these next two chapters involve basically the Underverse, which is the Bizarro thing. And I love it. It's so good. He tests out his a new power. But basically what happens is that they lose control of the Underverse, and now, the big square Earth is coming to, he has to deal with a Bizarro invasion.
Yeah.
And what I like is that...
I like the Bizarros are this weird virus that have to touch you.
Yeah, no, it's so cool. I find that sick. And how Lombard's performance pills are what stop him from being infected. Because, the Daily Planet crew, everyone except for Clark, because Clark apparently went on vacation after the interview with Luthor.
I meant to ask you about the performance pills. Are you trying to tell me this man took gas station dick pills, and that's why he didn't become Bizarro?
Well, that's the whole deal with Lombard, is that he's the weird chauvinist. In
yeah, because isn't there a moment where they talk about how he has a toupee, and he's like, "What toupee?
I don't have a hairpiece and it's on fire."
Yeah.
So that's the whole point of Lombard, is that he's kind of the chauvinist, machismo, I'm better than everybody else thing. In the 2016 Rebirth Action Comics run by Dan Jurgens, there's even a part where Lois is going into the Daily Planet, and he's doing the most dickish thing you can possibly do, and that is biking to work. Like obviously that's really good for the environment, but like he's
not doing it for the environment.
He's doing it because he thinks he looks cool.
Yeah,
you know,
like
and I think that's so fun. But like, yeah, he doesn't get turned into like a Bizarro like self, you know what I mean? And how Jimmy keeps pressing the button, and he calls Leo Quintum, who Project is also having their own issue with the Bizarro in that weird liminal space where there's sandbags but nothing else, and it's just a weird gradient, and they're firing at Bizarro enemies. What the fuck was that? Like, what the fuck was that shit? They're just in nothingness fighting Bizarro creatures.
Literally.
Yeah, but I love that where like Leo's like, how did you get this number? I thought we had this changed.
Me when I changed my number so Jimmy Olsen could stop fucking calling me.
Why can the Superwatch hack into New Year's blimps?
I don't know, man.
Like they're like, we need to get to the roof, and Perry White's like, it is -30, you fucking idiot. And then the Bizarro thing comes in, and he's like, we need to get to the roof.
Literally.
How do you feel about that fight between Bizarro, that really small fight between Bizarro and Superman? I think the best part about it is how he saves the kid.
Yeah, see, I think I kind of like very like just glimpsed through the fight, because from what it like really felt, and again, since I was like reading really quick, it might have been like not necessarily the same fight, but a lot of the vibe felt like they were fighting because Superman's like, why are you infecting my Earth? And then Bizarro's like, me sorry.
Yeah.
Like, because it seems like ultimately Bizarro wasn't trying to have this happen. It's just like the convergence of the planet that was bothering.
Oh shit! You know what I forgot about? This opens with, we didn't even mention the Sun Eater.
Yeah.
So back in the first issue with the second chapter, where he's showing Lois the Fortress of Solitude, which I love how he's just kind of like a goofy, like, here's a museum, here's my zoo, here's the thing I want to talk about, the Sun Eater.
Yeah.
And how this chapter opens with him letting the Sun Eater go. And then he sees the Bizarro shit, and I forgot that that while Jimmy is trying to page for him on the Superwatch, he's also dealing with the Bizarro people, right? Yeah. And how the issue kind of, it's like, oh, here's the Bizarro thing, right?
Yeah.
And they mentioned the whole deal with the thing, and he punches the shit out of the square.
Yeah.
Earth, right?
I'm just gonna sit on this but talk louder.
Okay, that works for me. And he talks to Lois, right, because he saves them from the Bizarro things, right? And that's how we find out about the dick pills making Lombard immune.
Yeah.
Right? And Lois is like, well, wait, we need to talk. I have not seen you in forever. We need to talk, right? And he's like, Lois, I'll be back, I promise.
Yeah.
Right? And he goes. And he goes, and then it's receding into the Underverse, right? Because Superman hit it, so it's trying to, because basically what they say is that the Bizarro world, the Bizarro, cube world is kind of all one entity, because like you said, it's a virus, right?
Yeah.
So the Bizarro clones and the cube world are connected.
Yes.
Right? So that's why it's trying to go back into the Underverse, is to heal. And Superman's there, and he basically gets stuck. And I like it how we get in, before we get to the next chapter, is this character named Zabaro.
Yes.
Who doesn't speak like the rest of the Bizarro people, and it's just like,
he's a mistake.
He's a mistake, right?
Yeah, he's like a rare 1 in 1 billion.
Like aberration.
Yeah.
Like he's not supposed to be the way he is. So because of this, the next chapter, right? Because I'm trying to keep these two chapters connected, because I think after this is the last few things, and then we'll talk about some of our little philosophical things.
Yeah.
Right? So, honestly, this is probably my favorite chapter. This one and the next one are my favorite chapters, is the one where he's in the Bizarro, world, and then the next one, which we're going to talk about in a second. I love it because, one, I'm a sucker for dumb Bizarro shit. Yeah. The last storyline in Tomasi and Gleason's Rebirth run involves Bizarro, and I think it's really fun. But I really like how Superman's just slowly losing his powers, and he's just kind of like, shit, I gotta get out of here. What do I do? And Zabaro's like, dude, it's useless, you know? Because Zabaro's view on the rest of the Bizarro people is like, look at these heathens. They're mindless. They're a monolith, basically. They can't help you. They're too stupid, right? Yeah. But eventually Superman gets them to be able to help, right? Because they have some kind of thing called All Night, which is basically like their little celebration before the cube Earth goes fully back into the Underverse. And he manages to get the help. He proves Zabaro wrong, but Zabaro's not a villain in this chapter. He proves Zabaro wrong because he manages to get the Bizarro creatures to help him build a rocket to get home. And I think one of my favorite little details is how Bizarro Jor-El is there. because the Bizarro world is his home planet. It didn't explode.
Yeah.
Yeah, I thought that was fun. Mirage, I think is what they call him. I just like it. It's a really good issue because I like how Bizarro Earth is trying to get him to stay with stuff like creating versions of his friends, like the Flash and
Batman.
Which they don't even see Batman. It's the Flash and Green Lantern, and their version of Wonder Woman is a statue because what they say it is that it's a beautiful woman that gets turned into an ugly clay statue, which is the reverse of her Silver Age origin.
Yeah.
Which I thought was funny, and how Batman's not there, or how they mentioned that the Watchtower's underground instead of in the sky, which I thought was fun, or how, like, the Flash is like, I don't have a secret weapon, and at the very end it's like the match. But I think what I want to highlight on in this issue that I did very much enjoy was two things. I'm going to nitpick real quick. I see where they're going with it in every single Bizarro storyline. I'm so fucking tired of Bizarro speak. It is so hard to understand a lot of the time because you kind of have to... Okay, so when people are bilingual...
Yeah.
I promise this has a point. When people are bilingual and say English is not their first language, one thing I've heard is that sometimes they think in their native language and then have to translate, right?
Yeah.
That is how I feel reading Bizarro speak. Is I'm sitting there and I'm like, okay, I'm gonna read it, and then I have to translate it and then reread it in the correct translation of what my brain is trying to say.
Yeah.
God forbid anyone tries to read this chapter in a different language where it's not basic English structure.
Yeah, I wouldn't. As someone who knows like the basis of like romantic languages, I have no clue how the fuck they wrote that shit in Spanish. I would have to look at it because I'm sure.
I really do want to get my hands on like a French or like a Spanish version of this copy of this book, just to see.
I feel like it's just based on your linguistic skills because like even though I obviously am not like bilingual or fluent on anything other than Spanish, I've always been able to, as long as I took the time out of my life to like study or look at language, I usually have a pretty easy time, my mind kind of clicking with it. So like. Whenever I read the Bizarro, like, yeah, it was pretty, like, jarring when I first saw it, but once when I, like, was like, oh, yeah, it's Bizarro talk, I was able to just immediately flip it in my mind.
Okay, yeah, so if you...
So it wasn't that big of an obstacle for me, in my opinion.
It's definitely more annoying whenever you're reading a storyline in a comic run, where it is half of the characters are Bizarro characters who speak in Bizarro talk.
And then the other ones aren't.
Yeah. So it's like, oh, I hate this. And sometimes it makes more sense if you don't like reverse it, where they'll say something and it makes more sense in the right way round if you don't reverse it and make it like it be them saying what they actually mean to say instead of it being, oh, pretty is ugly, ugly is pretty, you know. But in this, it's different. Like I like it. I like how he finds a way to talk to them and he gets them to help him. Right? But the one thing I really want to talk about that makes me kind of tear up is Zabaro.
Yeah.
Because Zabaro, like I said, he's not a villain. He spends pretty much the entire issue being like, look, Superman, it's pointless.
Yeah.
You know, we're not going to be able to do this.
Reading the whole thing with Zabaro, like, yeah, there's the whole article about, like, not article, but the whole point of, like, he kind of gave hope to him. And, like, because there is that scene towards the end where he's like, wait, don't leave me, like, you're the
he's like, I only just now noticed that your rocket only seats one.
Yeah.
You know?
And, like, there is, like, that kind of sad moment, but, like, I also, like, this goes back to my contrast point. I feel like Zabaro is almost like the Bizarro Luther.
Yes.
Because, like, he's the most intelligent man on there, and he does have that perception of, like, they're below him.
Yeah.
But instead of using that in, like, a narcissistic way, he's lonely. He's the Icarus who doesn't even see a chance of getting close to the sun.
Exactly.
Yeah, no, he's kind of like the opposite Luther.
Uh-huh.
And I feel like, because there is the whole idea about, like, him giving them hope, and I feel like that also is a really good, like, thing that comes on with, because the next chapter is almost kind of a similar thing, where while one he's like, the one he's giving hope, the other one he's kind of humbling in the next one. Yeah. Which, like, you know, you can constantly compare and contrast these chapters. But, like, Zabaro, yeah, no, he's definitely, like, the opposite Luther.
Because the way I see him is I kind of see him as, like, a Superman who gave up. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Who he feels like a Superman who, with all of his immense power, does not realize or does not really understand that so Zabaro sees himself. I'm having trouble, like, articulating what I'm trying to say. But Zabaro sees himself as above the other Bizarro people.
Yeah.
Because of intelligence, but instead of instead of using that ability to enrich his world like Superman does, he instead cowers in self-pity of, I'm the only one that no one understands me, that kind of thing. Which is why I really love how Superman just gives him that hope and is is like, I understand your greatness, right? The big thing is the poetry, right?
Yeah.
Where he's like, did you have time to read my poetry? And he's like, yes. He said you're not a failure, right? Because like I said, Zabaro sees himself as the 1 in a million flaw.
See, and that's kind of the reason, like, not to interrupt your train of thought, but that's why, like, in my opinion, like, in my interpretation of it, I almost saw it as, like, a failed Luthor more than a failed Superman. Because it's like, because the whole thing with Luthor is that he's super narcissistic, and he sees himself above everyone, but he uses that to be over everyone.
Yes.
While in this case, Zabaro's not narcissistic. And he's not like, I need to kill Superman, all that. Like, he sees himself upon everyone, but that gives him the sense of loneliness, which we could sit here and argue. I think that's where a lot of Lex Luthor's narcissism comes from.
Is that feeling of loneliness.
It's because he instead of dwelling negatively on, like, no one will never understand me.
Instead of quiet pessimism, it's violent narcissism for Luthor.
Yeah, because that's how he's coping, with the fact that he's, like, this super genius.
The smartest person in the world or whatever.
While this one is violently coping, because I feel like Zabaro has a lot of I feel like it's very inspired from the story Flowers for Algernon.
Yes.
Yeah.
Oh, that's such a good comparison.
Where like Zabaro, like Bizarro is Algernon at the beginning and ending of the story, while like Zabaro is like, he's Algernon when he's like the super genius that no one can relate to.
Right in the middle.
In the middle of the story.
He's like this equation and that equation and my ability to feel. But what I really love is Zabaro is like, why am I the only one that sees the beauty in the sunset and the joy of the cliffs? Why am I the only one that can see past the basic? And I like that the type of hope that Superman inspires in him is not, you are special, it's you're a sign that things are only going to get better.
Yeah. And that's and that's why I like the idea of thinking of it as like a failed Lex Luthor.
Yeah.
Because not only is it a Lex Luthor that's saved by Superman figuratively, but he's like, because this Lex Luthor is saved by Superman figuratively. Like, he gives him hope.
Yes.
While in the chapter with Lex Luthor, he's saved multiple times by Superman, literally. And I feel like this is a good figure, like, foreshadowing for the ending of the story.
Yes. So the poetry I really like because, you know, Lex, I didn't realize, but I'm not sure if you've noticed, but Superman makes a lot of promises he can't keep in this.
Yeah.
And one of the big ones he says, if I can, I will promise you to come back and see you again. Right? Yeah. And he keeps Zabaro's poetry with him. And I love that he's like the beauty of it, you know. He says, to go back to it, he says, you know, you're not a sign that you're not a failure. You are the sign that Bizarro world is getting smarter. You are the first of many, not the 1 in a million failure. You're the first of many.
Yeah.
You know, and I like that ending the page. I just love how even though Zabaro he gets inspired and he gets the little match from Bizarro Flash. And he's like, they're like, look, secret weapon, and he's about to light it. He's like, it just goes out. And he's like, oh, I'm sorry, Superman, I failed again. And then Bizarro's just like, and then he goes. And I love that final page. I cannot stop gushing about the artwork. I love the final page of him leaving, and Zabaro just looking up.
Yeah.
Because again, he's the one that sees the beauty in the sunrise and the sunset. And another thing about this fucking issue I want to say is Quentin fucking tells Lois that he's dying. Because one of the big things in this is that Superman doesn't tell Lois himself that he's dying, right? Because he's conflicted about it. He's like, oh, should I tell her? You know, I don't want to spoil her birthday.
He also specifically tells Quentin in the first
not
chapter,
to
like,
tell
don't
anyone.
fucking tell anyone.
He's like, don't say anything, you stupid asshole, right? And then Quentin's like, well, because to Quentin's credit, I think he genuinely believes Superman's not coming back.
Yeah.
You know?
Because no one's ever done it before. That's why it's a great feat that he came back.
Yeah, it's one of the 12 feats. But, like, he's like, oh, he didn't want to tell you this, but he's dying. We're doing everything we can, but so far we haven't found a cure. And that's basically the confirmation that Superman... Because if the smartest man in the universe, the actual smartest man... Which, hey, if you're going to talk about contrast, Quentin and Luthor. Because Quintum is actually the smartest. They're not that different. They're bazillionaires with infinite money who are intelligent beings. And what Quintum does is nothing but try to better humanity with his riches. Quintum is the Luther that actually is trying to save the world.
Yeah.
And if you look at it with Quintum, he is the Luther that's like, oh, if Superman, because Luther is like, oh, if Superman wasn't there, I'd be curing cancer, I'd be ending world hunger. Whereas Quintum is like, my research is going to help people. I am trying to make life better, right? That's what Quintum's doing. And you know what he's doing? Cooperating with Superman. Yeah. Superman is not this unforeseen factor that makes everything worse. Superman makes it easier, but Quintum is using his resources to do the right thing, right?
Yeah.
And it just kind of shows the hypocrisy of Luther. But Quintum, he fucking tells Lois that he's dying. What a bitch. Frankly, Sigma. What a Sigma move. Your friend and colleague tells you not to tell anyone that he's dying, and then he just goes ahead and tells your girlfriend? Pretty sick.
Yeah, he's pretty Chad for that one.
Honestly, I don't think Leo Quintum's really in any other stories. I think he was invented for this. I need to look into it. But I really think he was a really good choice.
Yeah, no, I liked him as a character. God, what was I about to say? There was something I had my big skull of mine. The I for Gar. Oh, now I remember. So is it 12 things that he does? 12 feats? Is it exactly the number 12?
I would need to look at the story one more time, but as far as I know, yes.
Because I think it was like 12 or 10, but regardless, what I was going to do is that there's another compare moment, and I'm going to bring up, because the whole Icarus story, right? So this is the thing that I was just thinking of. So Icarus.
Right.
Ancient Greek story. We have ancient Greek people with Samson and Atlas, right? Well, the whole 12 great feats thing. Or
12 super challenges.
Yeah, you know who also does that and is also with the Pharaoh thing? It's fucking Hercules. Yeah. Superman is doing Hercules.
Which I think it's very fitting that they chose Samson and Atlas. Yeah. They chose Samson, the guy who gave in to false love and had his hair cut to lose his powers, and Atlas, the one who's punished to hold the. They're not heroes.
Yeah.
They're fallen characters, which I think is interesting. But
well, that's why I just find interesting. There's so many references to
Hercules, Greek mythology in it, and just different mythologies in general. The use of the Ultra Sphinx, Samson and Atlas. Biblical.
Well, the Sphinx is part of the Hercules story.
Oh, that's right, it is.
Yeah, because he's the one that. Well, I can't remember. I'm pretty sure it was Hercules. It was either Hercules or another Greek hero. But I'm sure someone's gonna, one of the 7 ghosts that watch this and listen will probably be like, you stupid idiot. They're gonna either be like, you're stupid, it's definitely Hercules, or be like, you stupid, it's Perseus or some other person.
You dumbass, that's Wonder Woman that you're talking about, thank you?
Yeah, listen here, stupid fucking idiot. Yeah. Napoleon shot the nose off of Sphinx, okay?
Yeah, no. Why don't we talk about the next issue, the next chapter? The replacements, which, whenever you mentioned it, you never realize how I don't actually read the names of the chapters. This next chapter is called The Replacements, and whenever you were talking about it on the way to dinner the day after you read it, I was like, which one's The Replacements again? And basically, 2 months have passed, because Superman just got out of the Underverse, and
Yeah, time works differently.
Down there. And for him, it was maybe 2 hours. And for everyone else, it was 2 months. And basically, Superman has replacements now. Bar-El and Lilo. Members of the House of El who are astronauts who went missing in space. And now they're on Earth. This is my favorite issue.
I mean,
before we get to the last two, this is probably my favorite.
I wouldn't say it's my favorite.
Mm-hmm.
I get, it's probably the most, quintessential Superman, chapter.
Yes.
But, I don't know. I felt because, I get the reason it's there, but I feel like it was just kind of I don't know. In my opinion, it was more of a sleeper chapter. In my opinion. Because it's you start off, and it's you have these replacements where they're just kind of they're not really wanting to be Supermen. People see them as a replacement, but in reality,
they're just trying to make their own Krypton.
Yeah, they're trying to make their own Krypton because they see humans as inferior. They're being it's the whole Undermensch, Übermensch idea with Superman.
It's how the Nazis kind of interpreted the Superman myth. Yeah. Of this great higher above all. And even then, they're seen destroying a volcano.
Yeah, because one of the ironic things about Superman is that Superman himself is the Übermensch, but he does not act any way that the
Nazis saw it.
Saw the Übermensch, yeah. Because like the whole philosophy with nihilism and I should say nihilism. Nietzsche himself, when he described the Übermensch, was someone who became super to overpower the people under through the idea of culture. Because the whole Übermensch was the idea of humans who had defeated nihilism.
Nietzsche makes a cameo in this too. Remember? It's in the next chapter.
Ah, yeah, he does. Yeah.
Sorry, continue. I just wanted to say that Nietzsche cameo confirmed.
Well,
My favorite Superman character.
Nietzsche is just important to the Superman stories in general because it's like he's the one who coined the idea of a Superman, but his Superman was a human who becomes super through enrichment culture.
You hear that, Siegel and Schuster? You're fucking fakers.
Yeah, well, because like Nietzsche was against nihilism, and to him, nihilism is what bred the Undermensch, the idea of someone who's lesser. And the Übermensch is someone who defeats nihilism and ultimately proves that life's worth living through the enrichment of culture and all that. But with that being said, the idea of an Übermensch is a elitist ideal that is very romanticized, which is why the Nazis and the fascists took that, because they like this romanticized idea of humanity because they used it
to justify their shitty race politics.
Yeah, romanticizing isn't about facts. It's about feelings. Feelings matter over fact. And to them, the feelings of superiority matter more than any fact of humans being humans, and humanity deserves to live.
Yeah. And that's how I kind of see Bar-El and Lilo, because we see the first thing that we see them do is they're destroying a volcano, but it's not to save the village under it. It's what do they say? They say this will make a fantastic place for the capital of New Krypton.
Yeah. And I think that's where it kind of goes into the Nietzsche, because like them two are the Übermensch that Nietzsche describes. They see them as lesser, that they have the ultimate culture, they have the ultimate superiority. They need to overtake the Undermensch. Yeah. But like Superman is like this ultimate paradox where he is the Superman, but instead of being, because he enriches culture, he's enriching other people's lives.
There's a quote. It's not really like a quote, but I watched a video by a YouTuber named Thought Slime, and what they said, because they had a video on Superman, and they said, it was a video. It was a video about Superman and Lois, and they said that instead of being a person who protects from above, he rules from above. He's someone who protects from within.
Yeah.
Because again, mild-mannered reporter is Superman. Clark Kent is a human.
Yeah.
Okay, my favorite thing I've said before we continue talking about this issue, and this fits because Bar-El and Lilo are not like this at all. I think my favorite thing I've ever said about Superman is that Superman is a human that just so happens to be alien.
Yeah.
First and foremost, right? He is a human that just so happens to be an alien because he fights from within. He cares about people in an intense way, and Bar-El and Lilo just don't. You know, even stuff like how like later on we see that they have destroyed the statues of Jor-El and Lara Lorvan in the Fortress of Solitude because they see him as a relic of the past. Which is ironic that they're kind of like Krypton racists, that they're not like worshipping the past. And I think the reason why is because they see it, they even mentioned it before, it's like, you're the son of a scientist, weak, ineffectual, a quiet observer as opposed to a man of action.
Yeah.
Right? And I just really like that. How do you feel, before we continue talking about the like nice little philosophical question about this issue, is how do you feel about the little prank before Bar-El and Lilo like come again to antagonize Superman? The little prank where Lombard's like the lighter under his fucking ass.
I forget the prank.
So what it is that Clark just comes back, just them coming back, and this is after like his first interaction with Bar-El and Lilo, where they break his nose.
Yeah.
Which I was thinking about it in that scenario. I was like, why is that possible? Isn't he like stronger than ever right now? He just came back from the Underverse. I thought about this on this reread.
Oh, yeah.
He just came back from the Underverse. He's definitely not as strong as he should be because he has been away from the sun for, in our time, 2 months.
I guess it is like a small detail I didn't even think about.
Yeah. But like, he's like, oh, it's just a nosebleed. He's over at the water cooler. And Lombard like puts a lighter under his ass, and he's like, I know you're there, Lombard. And Lombard, and then, like, his hairpiece catches on fire. Here's my question. How does the hairpiece catch on fire?
That.
Yeah, it's weird, because it's implied that he didn't put that he put the lighter too close to his head. But in the All-Star Superman movie, the animated movie, what it is that Clark quickly uses heat vision to put to set the TVs on fire. Which I think is funny. And it would have been cool to see that in the actual comic. Maybe that did happen. Honestly, I haven't talked with Grant Morrison or Frank Quietly in quite a while. I haven't had a nice fireside chat with them in a while.
Yeah, so you should call him up.
I should call Grant Morrison my father.
Oh yeah, definitely, for sure.
Yeah. But I like how in that scenario, like you were saying about the Ubermensch, Beryl and Lilo show up and they're like, this is what Superman does with his time. He hides as a lowly human, which it reminds me of this issue of John Byrne's run of Superman back in the 80s, where it's an episode where Superman is trying to figure out Superman's identity, and at the very end, because all the stuff happens in the issue, and the lady who's been researching this is like, the only logical conclusion is that Clark Kent is Superman.
Yeah.
And Luthor's like, that's preposterous. That's dumb as fuck. Why would someone that powerful hide as a man, as a mild-mannered reporter? And I like how Beryl and Lilo are like, this is fucking weird. This is gross. Why are you doing it? And I like how Lombard thinks that they're talking about him.
Yeah.
I think it's so funny how he's just like, I'm not Superman strong.
Yeah, I know, because, like, he comes to the office and they're like, stop hiding as a reporter, and everyone's like, what the fuck are you talking about?
Like,
yeah, like, everyone's confused.
The comical levels of Clark Kent isn't Superman in this is just, like, we'll talk about it later, but that part in the last issue where they're like, nice Clark Kent disguise, Superman.
Yeah, like, it's so, they find it so hard to believe that Clark Kent is Superman that when they see it happen,
that Superman is in a Clark Kent costume than in being Superman.
Yeah, like, it's more believable. Yeah. Like, they almost put it as if it's like, it would be like if Superman came out of me.
He's like, nice Coty costume, Superman. Like, it's the same type of, like, situation as if Superman was dressed up as Barack Obama.
Yeah.
Like,
it's that outlandish.
Lombard's like, I'm not Superman strong. I like how he just immediately assumes that they're talking about him. Because realistically, if Clark Kent is Clark Kent and Superman is Superman, by default, Lombard would be the strongest one in the office.
Really?
Yeah. Because Perry's an old man, Cat Grant and Lois Lane can't be Superman because they're women. And then it's Jimmy Olsen.
Yeah. Dog
is sitting there wearing the Superman panties, like in that scene, and he's like, Clark, you're a man of fashion. How does this look? And Clark says, if I remember correctly, he says, it certainly is a fashion statement, Jimmy. No, but I like that because he's like, oh, they can't fathom in this very, like, fascistic way, they can't fathom why a man of his strength chooses to lower himself and be a human. Right?
Yeah, I feel like ultimately, if there's anything to take out of this, because I know I am talking a lot of philosophical stuff.
But this is the perfect issue for like the philosophy of Superman.
Well, because it's because I said this was a sleeper chapter, because like in my opinion, it's just I didn't personally enjoy it the most. Mm-hmm. But philosophically, because it's like. Because I feel like it's them talking about, like, that paradox I was saying, where it's, like, he is the Superman, but he's nowhere near what Nietzsche's Superman is. Because, like, I will sit here and I will say, the vision that everyone has of Nietzsche's Superman
is wrong.
Yeah, because I'm not here trying to defend what Nietzsche thinks is the Superman, because I still think it's wrong. So I'm not out here being some sympathizer, but at the same time, the whole fascist statement of the Superman that a lot of people think is also not Nietzsche's Superman. But like, with that being said, they are the like fascistic Nietzsche inspired Superman that fascists think, while Superman himself is the one that changes them and realizes that's not being the better person at all. You are supremacist.
You are puffing your chest on the playground.
Yeah, that's all you are. You are not. You may be super in strength, but you are not better.
You're not super in heart or in character.
Yeah. Because ultimately, what makes Superman better than everyone is not his strength or him being alien. It's the fact that he is he is selfless.
He's a human that just so happens to be alien.
Yeah, he is literally the signal of hope, which is what makes him super, not the fact that he's like unkillable, which is what this shows.
I think that my favorite part about this is how he helps them in the end, right? Because they've been nothing but dicks to him. They literally break his nose within seconds of meeting him.
Yeah.
Like,
and then threaten to, like, I don't know, enslave all of humanity.
Yeah, but like whenever they start to lose, whenever they can't see their powers, whenever Lilo falls, Superman drops to catch her. And I like how at the very end, whenever he puts him into the Phantom Zone, Bar-El asks, he says, "Why are you showing this compassion?" And he goes, "You said earlier that I'm the son of a scientist, and you're right. I observe. I look at the whole picture, you know, and you are still people regardless of what it is, right?" And it's just, I just think it's really nice. It shows the ultimate compassion of Superman as a person who can understand when someone has done something wrong and still does not want them to, you know, like, he very well could have just let Bar-El and Lilo die, but instead he gave them a second chance of letting them be basically the lawmen of the Phantom Zone.
Yeah.
You know? Oh, before we stop talking about this issue, could we talk about how they were like, yeah, what are you doing keeping all these Phantom Zone people still in the Phantom Zone? What are you doing? These are Kryptonian citizens. Who cares if they were criminals? If I'm correct, what Bar-El and Lilo say is that any one of these super criminals is better than any thousands of humans.
Yeah, no, because they're ultimately like Krypton supremacists. Like, they want to recreate Krypton, and they see people who have committed crimes against Krypton more important than what they see
humans who have done nothing wrong.
Yeah, because to them they see humans as animals. It's the whole kind of like heathens versus heretic argument, you know, during like the colonial ages, like not, you know, trying to bring some like politics with religion, and like Christians, when they colonized the New World, treated natives way worse than any like heretic, like within came like Muslims or other people of other religions, because to them they were godless individuals. They were animals to them. So it's like, it's the same kind of aspect that they would rather have some like, I don't know, some like murderer on Krypton come back than let a human be at their level.
They would have a General Zod be in a position of power much
before they even recognize a human as a person.
Yeah, before they'd even recognize the authority of a president, much less a manager at Taco Bell.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
Basically, they're giant space Karens when you think about it.
That's so dumb, but you're right. Oh, I hate that. Okay, so the last two issues, we can talk about it now. The last two issues don't really have a central focus beyond setting up the end of the plot, right? So...
I mean, you could talk.
Yeah, I could, but I just saw fucking... We're keeping that pause in, and he's twerking. Anyways, so a lot of it is a lot of Superman getting his last will and testament in order, right?
Yes.
Which I like. I think it's really cool how he's like, oh, I, Clark Kent of Earth.
We're also where it has the tiny doctors.
Yes! Okay, we'll talk about the tiny doctors in a second. But a lot of it is he's trying to get as much done as possible. He's saving people. He stops a liner from like a train from falling, and you know, he saves some people, right? It's a lot of Superman saving people. And one thing I noticed is that it's going back and forth.
Yeah.
Which is why it has the time, like it shows like the time in the corner of every panel. I like how he's trying to figure stuff out. He's trying to figure out if the world's going to be safe if there's a Superman, right? Yeah. And so he makes Earth Q, which is kind of the world without Superman, right? Yeah. Which is implied to be our world, right? Yeah. You know, and he's trying to observe that the world's going to be, you know, fine. And he's going back and forth, stuff like he finally gives Quintum his genome, every single letter of his DNA, with instructions on how to combine it with human DNA. You know, he's talking back and forth. He fights that big Meccano man, and like Lois is like, you know, I did this on purpose to talk to you, right?
Yeah.
I just like it that like he's like, I have last will and testament, and he's just doing fantastic, right? From what it sounds like, the nurse says that he's been visiting the cancer kids a lot.
Yeah, well, he says more than recently.
So one of the things is that Quintum goes to Kandor. Because one of the things that Bar-El and Lilo mentioned in the previous issue is how it's a fucking affront to nature that Kal-El has not done enough to make the people of Krypton big enough.
Yeah.
Like back to the people of Kandor back to the normal size, right? But in this issue, we get Quintum to go talk to the people of Kandor, right?
So that's my thing. Not to interrupt. So he makes Quentin small enough to go talk to the people of Kandor. How does he make him back to normal size? Because couldn't he just do that on the people of Kandor?
It's a temporary thing. It's set to a temporary way. From what I know, he wants to make the entire thing big and everyone back up, but it's basically too long of a process. I think is the issue, right? And they're having this conversation because what Quintum says, he's like, look, you guys could have a chance, you know? They're like, what we must do, we have things we could do, and it's the last-ditch effort to save Superman, right? Basically, it's Quintum's last chance. And several members, I think they call them like the Kandor 7, are basically a bunch of people who are like, we're going to leave the bottle of Kandor, we're going to leave the bottled city to try and help Superman, right?
Yeah.
And unfortunately, they fail, right?
Yeah.
Because what it is that as he's going around doing stuff, the Kandor 6, I'm just gonna check. I don't want to say the wrong thing. Just get. Oh shit! I forgot to mention this. This part right here. Hang on. This part right here, where we get these close-ups, right, of Superman, like his body. He's sweating so bad, and he looks at his hand. Like, you ever not felt good and your body's shaking, and you try to just like focus on your hand? That's what that is, right?
Yeah.
I'm trying not to get the one scene. There it is. Okay, it's the Kandor Emergency Corps. That's what they're called, right? And they apologize, and they're like, "Look, I'm sorry, Superman. We there's nothing we can do to stop you from dying." And he's like, "It's okay. You've done what you can to help but there are some people you can help, right?" And he goes back to the cancer ward, and he's like, "I'm back, and I've brought friends." And he extends his hand to do the thing. Look at that! Superman basically has cured cancer, right? Which is awesome. Like, that's such a cool Superman thing to do.
I'm gonna bring that shit up next chapter.
Yes, you are. And it's just, he takes all his time, he's trying to get his last things in order, he's saving person after person after person after person, and he destroys the Mechanoman's, like, robot, and Lois is like, "I've been trying to talk to you, you and I need to talk." And he hears in the back of his head someone talking, right? And it's like, "Oh no, everyone, like, step away." And he's like, "I'm sorry, Lois, someone needs." And then we get to,
the girl.
Right. So earlier, whenever he saves the liner, there's a dude in there on the phone. He's like, "Regan, I got held up. You know, I'm on my way now." And this is basically the conclusion of that. And it's a woman, a young girl, braced to kill herself. Right.
Yeah.
It's a long, full, top to bottom page, like panel of her dropping her cell phone and bracing herself. Right. Truly, this is probably the best blocking that this comic has, because it's her getting ready to brace herself, and then the next panel, the background, the building that she's standing on is just consumed by Superman, calmly grabbing her shoulder and saying that things are never bad as they seem, your doctor did get held up, and it's going to be okay. And that is a fantastic page. It is, you mentioned that this last chapter was quintessential Superman. This is quintessential. This is the pure beauty. I remembered, because whenever I woke up to you having read it all in one night, you sent me a Snapchat that said, "Yeah, fuck you for this one." And it was the page.
Yeah, because fuck you. I wasn't trying to sit here and almost cry over Superman. Like, hello?
Yeah,
he's supposed to be funny man in red underwear.
Yeah, he's not supposed to keep me from killing myself for another 7 months.
Yeah, exactly.
Like, dumbass.
Lexapro, more like Superman go. Yeah.
But, like, it's fantastic. It's just, it's quintessential Superman. Superman is fucking dying.
Yeah.
And he still takes the time. Precious seconds he could have used on something else.
Bro, he literally left the love of his life to go stop a kid from killing himself.
A kid he doesn't know. He literally, Lois is like, "We need to have this conversation, you know?
Yeah.
There's gotta be a way. There's always a way." And he's like, "Somebody else needs me." And he does what is probably one of the most selfless things you can do, and that is stop someone from hurting themselves. And it's beautiful. It is the thesis statement of Superman, is that other people are, the beauty of other people is important, and it deserves to be protected.
Yeah.
You know? And it makes me tear up. It makes me feel a lot of emotions, and I really like it. right?
Yeah.
And one other thing I want to mention about this chapter before we stop talking about it is the Earth Q stuff, right? So as the issue's going along, we get little flashes of what's going on the mini Earth that he's created, Earth Q, right? And I love how we get stuff like Vuvuzela Horn, Nietzsche cameo, where he speaks of the Superman, right? And I think my favorite part is, if you remember at the end of that chapter, the last little bit of Earth Q we get, right? Because basically the thesis statement is that a world without Superman will be fine.
Yeah.
You know, it's the world that we live in, and we're still living, and we're still striving.
Yeah.
And I like how at the very end of the issue, it's a Brooklyn, where are they from? An apartment in a city that's like, the outside of he's like, all right, third time's the charm. This time, this one's gonna go. And it's a sketch of Superman's first design, implying that that's Siegel and Schuster creating the Superman, you know? And that is beautiful. That is such a beautiful situation. And I just love it, man. Like, this is... So I said that, like... Which one did I say was the best written one? Luther's chapter? Luther's chapter I said was the best written one. This one is right up there, right?
Yeah.
Because I would say this, is that the Luther chapter is a really good character study on Luther, whereas this one is a very good character study on Superman. Yeah. This is what genuinely boils him down to his essentials. Because he has to fight one villain in all this, that's Meccano Man, but he's spending pretty much the entire of it helping other people and doing the right thing, and giving Kandor its own space for the tiny little Supermen to live. Yeah. And it is very much Superman doing everything he can. The last issue is when shit hits the fan. So, if I remember correctly, this next issue starts with him fighting the Tyrant Son. How did you feel about the Tyrant Son thing? I thought that was kind of a fun little thing.
Yeah.
How he has to fight a big evil son thing who's quote-unquote Luther's secret little pal.
Yeah, like... Sorry, I'm yawning. The coffee with learning disabilities kicking in.
As always. As it should, frankly.
Yeah, no, coffee peaks like an hour in, and then, or any caffeine.
And then you're just dying for the rest of it.
Yeah, pretty much. So, so it's like this whole, like, galactic supercomputer.
Yeah.
That, like, Lex tries to befriend because he has his grand scheme.
To poison the sun and turn, like, the sun red so that Superman doesn't have his powers, you know.
Yeah. But he ends up betraying him at the end.
Yeah, at the end, what ends up happening instead is that the Tyrant Son, who is damaged... So Solaris is the name of the Tyrant Son, and he's actually already damaged the sun. But I like how what he does is he's, like, talking to the last of his super robots that's going to take care of everything. He's like, a bunch of our animals got altered from the whole Bizarro incident, so they need special care. He's back in the Sun Eater's room, and he's like, I know he got too big, but I do really miss our little Sun Eater. He was such a light of our life, and I thought that was cute. And now he's talking about how things need to be done properly, you know. And then the rest of his superbots are like, let us assist you. He makes a special costume to not get hurt by the sun, by the Solaris, by the Tyrant Sun, and the rest of his superbots are like, let's help you, right? And it's a really good part where he's trying to fight it, and there's the one superbot that's like, I'm sorry, I was hacked by Lex Luthor to do the thing, right? That we'll talk about in a second. And then the Sun Eater returns, which my favorite part, I think your favorite part about this was when the Sun Eater returns.
Yeah, because it's just like because like the whole fight was just to be like fun, but I think it's just like over dramatic, because like the Sun Eater returns to assist Superman, and then the Sun Eater dies to Stellaris, and then he's like, no! He's like, no! And like fucking like, as if he like just killed his son.
Yeah, and just pounds him down to Earth.
Yeah.
I think my favorite part with that fight is
Bro killed his dog.
Bro killed his dog, and John wicked the fuck out of the Tyrant's son.
Yeah.
No, but like I think my favorite part with the whole stuff with Solaris is that he's like, years from now, you're gonna be you're gonna help humanity.
Yeah.
This is your chance to start now. And then as he's about to punch him, Solaris is like, no, it's gonna hurt! And Superman's just like, you'll live. And just like a massive explosion. I thought that was sick. And I think it's really awesome that I think it's a really fun little hokey situation. And then the other major plot in this is Luthor's last day.
Yeah.
Luthor is about to get executed. Uh-oh! Luthor, they let him mix his own drink, the fucking idiots.
He makes Superman potion.
He makes
3 a.m. Gone wrong, gone sexual in the hood.
He fucking...
Siri's pregnant.
Yeah. And he has the powers, but you mentioned this really poignant line right before they said it. And I want you to talk about it real quick because I know what you want to say about the whole
thing. So motherfucker, so before he gets executed, right, the fucking guard is like talking to him because there's the whole thing about Lex Luthor talking because he's like, you know, how does it feel to be executing the man that could have cured cancer?
That could have cured your sister's cancer.
Yeah, because he brings up the fact that his sister died of cancer like a few years ago or whatever. And he was like, how does it feel to execute the guy that could have cured cancer and could have saved your sister or whatever? But like, the thing is, kind of with my point of contrast, is literally the chapter before, Superman sends out the Kandor Force to cure people's cancer.
Mm-hmm.
Like, that's the whole thing, is that, like, Lex Luthor is a bunch of coulds, while Superman does.
Yeah.
Like,
and
he doesn't wonder, can I or can I not? He just does it if he can.
Yeah. Because with Luthor, Luthor kind of feels like, in situations like this, the teenager in high school who's really brilliant, but only procrastinates.
Yeah.
Where he's like, I can do this, I can do this, I can do this, but doesn't.
Luthor refuses to apply himself differently, like, just for his narcissistic beings. Like, literally, the only reason he would ever think or, like, the only way he would push himself to cure cancer is just so he could be the man who cured cancer, not because he actually wants to save people. But
yeah.
Why would he be out here curing cancer when he's currently doing the thing that, in his mind, is bigger than being the man who cures cancer, which is the man who kills Superman. Yeah.
Yeah. I really like how he just kind of like breaks out. You know, he kills him. You know, he kills the people. He goes and gets his niece, and is like, this shit's
emo niece.
Emo niece, yeah. Boy, does he have some drip though. That fucking outfit is so
drippy, though.
It's such a Luthor like drip, purple and green. What do you expect? That's such a Luthor moment. Frankly, certified Luthor moment.
Certified Jeff Bezos moment.
I'm like, damn, what's going on in the Amazon warehouse? And it's like Jeff Bezos in like the green and purple walking on air.
Bruh.
You know. I love how his niece doesn't kill Jimmy Olsen because he's like, why don't we write about this? We can do some puff pieces and shit. I thought that was really fun. We get to the part where Clark is like stumbling to get to his desk to like send the Superman dead story to Perry. And there's the little part where Kat Grant, who's the blonde one, because she's in this, but she barely talks. She's like, why do you look different, Clark? And he's like passing out on his fucking like work and right. And the Daily Planet's all like surrounding him. And Luthor like smashes through the building and is like, you're the ones that put me behind bars.
Yeah.
And they're like, Luthor, the truth put you behind bars. He's like, well, I'm not gonna kill you all just yet. You're gonna be the first to tell me about the world. You're gonna be the first to mention the world without Superman. Right? And they're all focused on Clark. And then we get the part that I was talking to you about, where it's like in Clark's mind, where it's like him on Krypton with his father, and he's like, Dad, why did you call me here? Like, I have very important stuff to be doing, right? Jor-El's like, look, we're dead.
Yeah, you're dead.
Yeah, literally, he's like, you're dead. We're going now. Krypton, I died 30 years ago on Krypton, you know. I love the part.
You gotta forgive yourself, I died 30 years ago.
That's basically what it is. But like, what is it that he says? Oh yeah, Kal-El's like, you know what, that's it. Turn the hover car around, we're gonna go visit the doctor. You're going mad. And he's like, no, son, listen. You're dead. You arrived on Earth, and this is the end. This is your end time. And I really like it. There's this part where Kal-El's like, but I had one more challenge left. And his father is like, there's always one.
Yeah.
Which is interesting. I feel like that's advice my dad would give me. It's like, there's always going to be one more thing you gotta do in life.
So the thing that I'm gonna ask, because you know, it's eventually gonna get to the point where it's like, yeah, we're at the conclusion. Superman comes back to stop Lex Luthor.
Yes.
Is the reason he comes back from being dead? Because this is how I interpret it. Is it because the sun went blue?
Yes.
Because in my mind, it's the sun went blue, and I'm assuming he gets more power from a blue sun than a yellow sun.
Yes, that is true.
Because I would assume the hotter the color, the more power he gets, because that's why Kryptonians were just kind of almost human-like with a red sun, but since he's under a yellow sun, he's a Superman.
Yeah, that's how it is.
Yeah, that's what I thought.
But yeah, he's like, because like during that whole thing, Jor-El's like, you can either face your current situation. So he's like, you have two choices. You can just let yourself go, or you get your last chance, right, to set things right. My throat is dry as fuck. I should have grabbed a water before we started recording. We are 2 hours and 15 minutes in.
Yeah.
That's insane. Good thing we're like going to be done probably within the next like 30 minutes. Hopefully.
Now we keep talking about the time.
Yeah. Keep talking about the time. It's only going to be faster. I like how he comes back, and there's the thing I said, where it's like, nice Superman disguise, nice Clark Kent disguise, Superman, and it's just, that's so dumb, but I like it, because there's this part whenever he comes back to life, and he's like, I would like to stand up to you, Luthor, and he's like, you, Clark, the oaf, you're gonna do it, and he's like, with like the gravity gun, right? I should have wrote it down. But the Daily Planet has a spare Superman costume?
Yeah, I guess so. Like, he was prepared.
Why do they have it? I do really love the nice Clark Kent costume thing.
Listen, you gotta understand, right? Boy Scouts oath, always be prepared.
That's true. But, like, it's not like the classic Superman. He had the costume under his clothes thing. No, it was, here's our backup of your costume, Superman.
Well, you also have to think that throughout this entire comic, clearly Superman has been working with the Daily Planet constantly.
Yeah, no,
it's like Jimmy Olsen has to watch. Everyone knows Jimmy Olsen has to watch. Lois Lane is just like common talking through that she's fucking Superman.
Even Clark lies and says that he's around the office every now and then.
Yeah, because that's the whole thing on like why he gets the Superman story before Lois Lane is that he's BFFs with Superman.
Yeah. Like, again, it's just like, this is why Superman's my favorite hero, you know? But, like, he does it. He fights Superman. So Superman comes back, gets the costume, and he fights Superman. And I think he says he picks the gravity gun because it weighs him down, and it makes him easier to fight. But, I really like the conclusion, because Superman's basically on the ropes, and Luthor's just beating the shit out of him. And he's like, take a picture, Gene. But then, again, there's a really nice moment where Luthor stops and he's like, oh, and he sees the world through Superman's eyes, right? Yeah. And he sees stuff like the theorems that are wrong in the world because of how it actually works. And he's like, oh, it's all connected. And he cries, which is what I love seeing Luthor cry. Because this entire time, Luthor has been nothing but a pompous piece of shit. He has been haughty, he's been superior, he beats one parasite.
Yeah.
Because he thinks he's better than him. And then in this moment, he cries and is just like, no. It's as he's losing his powers, too.
Yeah.
And he's like, no, what's happening? You know, I need it again. I thought I timed it. And Superman very quietly hits him in the face and puts him on the ground and is like, you would have saved the world years ago if it mattered to you. Which is, I think, is my favorite line. Is that it's right after this piece of humanity for Luthor. This sliver of humanity. Where, because the entire time, Luthor is talking about how Superman's just an alien, really oblivious to the fact that the one that really lacks that empathy is Luthor, not Superman.
Luthor is, when it comes to Superman v. Luthor is the least human, and he's the human.
He's the one that's the most human. He's not the one with superpowers. He's not a weird alien collector.
The alien
he's not a clone. He's not a big purple man. He's not a lady with lightning powers. He's just a guy.
The alien is more human than Lex Luthor, and so is like every other quote unquote freak throughout the whole story.
Yeah. Which is just how it is. It's just true. Right? But I love that they underscored that the last moments of Luthor are humanity. Yeah. Right? That it's him crying because he sees the world as it is.
Yeah.
As people connected together. As things connected together. Instead of, I'm above everything else. He sees himself he sees it as he's part of a whole as opposed to, I am above everything else.
I love that his emo niece is just like, you're embarrassing me.
You're embarrassing me, Luthor. Uncle Luthor, why are you doing this?
Emo niece. emo niece.
I just really love that Superman is like, you could have saved the world years ago if it mattered to you. Because again, as I said earlier, and that was a revelation I had while we were recording, Leo Quintum is the basically good timeline Luthor. He's using his infinite resources and intellect to better humanity.
Yeah.
You know? To make connections with alien planets, to mine resources that could be effective and helpful for the Earth, you know. But Luthor just, like you said, his narcissism is what matters to him, not his resources, right?
Yeah.
And the very end, we get the whole the tyrant son mentions earlier on that it poisoned the sun. The sun is dying.
Yeah.
And
that's why it went blue.
So that's what I think. Well, no, he did that on purpose. So the Solaris, so Solaris in his final moments before he turns off, basically, he tricked Luthor and turned the sun blue.
Understandable.
Yeah. So I love how in the end we don't actually see Superman die. For all intents and purposes, Superman dies at the end, right? But what actually happens is that in his final moments.
Yeah. Well, because I would argue he doesn't die. Like, he dies in the sense that he's no longer on Earth, but he starts fading away.
Yeah, his body is chipping apart.
But when he goes into the sun, he's no longer chipping apart, but he becomes the sun's new heart. So it's
yeah, I was gonna say that.
Yeah.
I was gonna mention that because you and I were talking is he trapped in the sun? I would argue that's not the important part. The important part is that he's quote unquote building the sun a new heart.
Yeah.
But thematically, he is the sun's new heart.
Because, ultimately it insinuates that him being dead means that he's entrapped there forever being the sun's heart, so he might as well be dead. Because he's never going to not be in the sun.
Yeah.
He's always there.
The way that I see it, right?
He's going to be constantly repairing the sun for you.
I love those final few panels, that page before he starts flying towards the sun, where he's like, I have to go. Because from what I can tell, the last feat of his is to repair the sun. They don't say it, but I'm pretty sure that's the last feat.
Yeah, I'm pretty sure it is, too.
Yeah. But, I think it's a really good thematic ending, or how we see a little bit in the future where we have a statue of Superman and they print the Superman dead thing. And Lois is like, he's not dead. We just did that so that it was an omen from the future. He's not dead, you know. And then we get that final image before we get the epilogue of the entire series, where it's him just
he's cranking that
soldier boy, and he's just hard at work fixing the sun, right?
Yeah.
And I love that because that is also the ultimate selflessness of him. He chooses to, in his final moments, he chooses to save people over spending it quietly with loved ones. He chooses to go into the sun to fix it, to spend the millions of years it'll take fixing the sun.
And arguably, I feel like that's another reference to another Greek legend with the whole what's his name? The I forget the name of the Greek person, but the one that's constantly rolling the boulder back up the cliff. Yeah. He's basically him.
It's a Sisyphean task, but he doesn't have it.
Does it anyway.
It's like if Sisyphus grew to care for his boulder.
Yeah, it not only grew to care for his boulder, but you have to remember that was done with no choice. He what's his name again? Sorry.
Sisyphus.
Sisyphus. Sisyphus? Okay. Sisyphus, he knew he was ultimately going to be punished for the gods, and what he did was for the betterment of humanity. Mm-hmm. But, ultimately, what he did was a punishment. Clark and Superman, this wasn't a punishment. This was a conscious choice that he made to punish. He basically punished himself.
Yeah.
And he doesn't see it as a punishment. He's doing it ultimately, this task that's going to entrap him forever and put him in this loop of constantly repairing the sun because he cares for humanity. So ultimately, it's as if Sisyphus knew that he was going to be entrapped for eternity, repeating the same task for humanity's sake. Because that's an important part about the Sisyphus story, is that he betters humanity, but he tries to run away from the gods and ultimately fails.
Yes.
There is no punishment from the gods. This is Superman sacrificing himself.
Yes. And then we get the end. The end is basically a stinger of Leo Quintum being Superman 2.
Yeah.
You know?
Well, and this is the thing that I'm going to discuss, and this is probably going to be the last thing, because this is the one thing I'm wrapping my mind around.
Yep.
Is that now I get I guess thematically all Supermen are, I'm gonna put quotations over related, because they're the only ones that understand each other, so they might as well be family even if they're not blood. Because my thing is the way that the Supermen of the future talk to each other is that it seems like as if he literally says, my Superman lineage.
Yes.
Is he saying that figuratively? Because when I hear the term Superman lineage, it's like...
You think of his bloodline.
Yeah, I think of him as a bloodline, but he has no kids before he dies. So are we talking about as a bloodline as in like they're test tube babies because it's Superman's genome? Or are they just metaphorically his bloodline because they're other Supermen, but they're not related to Clark at all?
I think that the lineage is more of a metaphorical. We are all Supermen. Because they make it sound like...
I guess you could say like it's like his blood lineage because it's like a test tube baby, but I think that's a stupid like excuse.
It still counts.
I guess.
So yeah, Superman, All-Star Superman is a fantastic thing. And you had a couple things you wanted to say as like a wrap. You mentioned as we could do as a wrap up, and that was one thing I missed was that you mentioned the whole thing with gravity.
I'm trying to remember exactly what I said.
Because you had said the thing that like gravity, how like they often call upon gravity. The Underverse has heavy gravity. He can't escape Bizarro World because of the gravity. The gravity gun at the very end
is what ultimately defeats Luthor because he explains whenever he's like, I timed this perfectly. Superman explains like, no, you dumb. The physics of since you're under heavy gravity. Gravity affects your metabolism, and since you're under heavy gravity, your metabolism's working faster, and so instead of you being like a Superman for a day, you're only a Superman for 2 hours.
Yeah.
Like,
so what I think is super cool whenever you mention gravity, because if I remember correctly what you said is that the mentions of gravity are interesting, because it kind of feels like the mentioning of gravity is like a metaphor for his inevitability of death.
Yeah, because now I remember I remember my point.
Juiced them up. We're
good. You've juiced me up now.
Yeah.
Yeah, because we're ultimately what I was talking about, because they mentioned about like they constantly talk about like Einstein.
I'm so sorry for the fucking audio of you going back and forth.
Don't care. If I can be heard, then that's fine.
Yeah, it's all
You're gonna have to get used to me pacing.
Can't wait till if we ever have like a place to like sit down and do this. You're gonna be standing around. Like,
regardless.
Yeah.
Because my thing is that like the whole thing where they talk about like the being super smart and they bring up like Nietzsche and Einstein and all that is because like even out of philosophy, the whole idea of like E equals mc squared, the whole point that Einstein was doing with the point of relativity and why the point of relativity is important is because he was showing that gravity and time is directly linked. And I think it all kind of comes together in this metaphorical philosophical sense that like Superman, like gravity is very important to this because Superman is very tied. His time is limited, and almost to an extent, his gravity is limited because gravity ultimately influences time, which is why I think for a second that that the Underverse like has this heavy gravity, but also time moves a lot quicker in the real world and a lot slower in the Underverse when he's with Bizarro.
Sorry, I had to go. My roommate was very astounded by the fact that we have been doing this for 2.5 hours.
Because gravity does directly affect time. Like, it makes sense that time would move faster on Earth instead of there because gravity affects the time.
Yeah.
So it's like, I don't know, it all kind of comes together. And like, to reference another piece of work where I think this also fits in, that's also a big premise in one Araki's JoJo Bizarre Adventure. Yeah, no, it all comes back. I'm sorry. But like it works because gravity is this point that he makes across where, to be fair, his is a lot less scientific and it's more supposed to be tied to fate.
Yeah.
But we could say fate's just a predetermined passage of time. And it is like this idea that gravity affects time. And so, like, I do think it ultimately... I know I've constantly repeated the word gravity in time, but I'm trying to put my point across that it's like, it's this weight.
Yeah.
Gravity is less this idea of, oh, I'm weighted down to Earth, and it's more like there's weight behind these events that push forward his time.
Yeah.
And I think it's almost to an extent supposed, like, it all comes together when it becomes the sun's heart, because, like there's multiple layers to it. There's the whole, like, the sun gives him the power... gives him power, so he becomes the sun's heart. The sun is what gives everyone life, and he's become the sun's heart. It's the sun that kills him. He's entrapped there. But I think an extra layer is the discovery of gravity affecting time was due to warpings of our sun.
Yes.
So it almost comes together even on the Einstein layer of the point of relativity that the sun is involved.
God, there are so many fucking Einstein references in this.
There is, exactly. And that's what I'm
Yeah.
saying. I think that's why it all fits together, because they're trying to make that point of relativity argument. And that's why I think it's perfect that ends with the sun, because the point of relativity started with the sun.
Yeah.
Yes!
This book is fantastic.
Yeah,
Oh my
it
God.
was very well thought out before they did this.
And this is very much this is kind of what Grant Morrison is, just kind of the person as a writer that they are, right? Is they mentioned that in an interview, which I might just play the clip, around the time that they were working on All-Star Superman, their father just died.
Yeah.
Right? And how there's kind of an influence that. And I just... So I think the worst thing you can do, right, whenever it comes to a Superman story, is disregard his humanity. All of the best, like, standalone Superman stories, they focus on his humanity, right? Superman for all seasons is in love with it, right? The idea of him being a very human character. Other stuff, even ones that have it as less of a focus, Superman Brainiac, the reason why he goes to confront Brainiac and get the bottled city of Kandor is because his care for those people, that they are people that they're basically out of his reach, but he still does it, right? Superman Brainiac is a good one. We're gonna have to read Superman Brainiac eventually, but I just the best thing you can do with a Superman story, and a good Superman writer understands the humanity and importance of Superman, right? Something Garth Ennis, I don't like him because he made The Boys. I don't like The Boys.
Let's put this in parentheses. The Boys comic.
I don't like The Boys comic. I haven't read the show.
I haven't watched the show, and I've been told that the show is fantastic. But I've also been told that the show takes a lot of liberties, especially after season 1, that do not follow the comic whatsoever.
Maybe if we get big enough, we'll read/watch The
Big
Boys.
enough?
So do you have any closing thoughts about the story? I should say.
So my closing thought on the story is that I think it was pretty heartwarming.
Mm-hmm.
Like, I think that was ultimately, overall, it was just trying to show the humanity of Superman.
Mm-hmm.
And like, the point of even a godlike figure is trying to accept death. Yeah.
It's a very human thing, is coming to terms with your own passing.
Because, as I said, that's what makes that. I think that's like the biggest difference between like humanity and fiction is that we ultimately die. Like,
for sure.
And even though he doesn't quote unquote die, he might as well be dead.
This is probably going to be because we chose to do as our first episode one that's a 12-chapter story.
Yeah.
This is probably going to be one of the longer ones. I know, unless we're doing like stories, which, for heads up, we will eventually be doing actual runs, but those are going to be in parts because we can't talk about like a 30-40 issue story.
Yeah, and eventually we're going to do shit that I've read instead, like that I've read and he has not.
Yeah.
And I'm introducing him to shit.
Yeah.
So, El Ratio Bozo, you're going to have to read JoJo.
Look forward to me having to read Berserk eventually.
Big sword man make me want to lift.
Fucking... Yeah, I think for my closing statements on this, it's fantastic. It's amazing how much of a uplifting, like, and emotionally resonant story it is about a very dark topic about the idea of the death of a character, especially a character that means so much to me. I haven't really said it. I think I only said it once or twice, but Superman is my favorite superhero of all time. Just past our microphone is 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 Superman figures. And a handful of other DC figures. Superman is my favorite superhero. I have a Superman cape on my fucking, like, wall.
There's a severe lack of grass being touched
in this apartment. I have a Superman poster in the back. I have Superman comics. I gave Cody here my physical copy of All-Star Superman to read. I have a bunch of other stuff. I have a million Superman comics. Superman is one of the few characters I actually collect comics for. He is my favorite superhero. So a story like this is really important to me because I get to see my favorite character be given the justice that he deserves, right? Should I give your book report a final grade?
Yeah, give me a grade. Did I understand the material I was given?
I'm going to say that you're going to get an A+ for this book report.
Let's go! It took me only 2 hours to read it.
Yeah. That's the part where you scream. I read the Spark Notes.
I read those Spark Notes.
Did you?
No, I definitely like speed read it, and like I feel like I didn't fully digest everything.
Do you think that if you reread it, you'd get a lot more out of it?
I probably, because that's just kind of the issue with a lot of when I read things is I tend to just always speed read what I read because something learning disability. So I always feel like I always don't fully absorb the material because sometimes I go into this like sludge of reading where everything like I don't fully digest it. Like I know what's going on, but I'm just like my brain goes numb while I read things, and that's why like a lot of times if it's something that like I'm not saying I didn't find this special because I just got done before I ultimately got to that point, but I can feel it coming towards the end. Yeah, which is why like there's certain gaps in material in my mind. Yeah, but like for instance, when I read manga that it's like something I like genuinely like I'm very passionate about reading, I will just stop at an abrupt point in the story, and it's because I feel that sludge in my brain, and it's
you
like,
stop so that you can kind of read. That's what
I
do
don't want to go into airplane mode,
yeah.
basically.
So, the next thing... So that was a very good book report. I hope you guys really enjoyed that. And the next thing we're going to read is... Because we did Superman, and now we're going to go through a couple things. So our next book we're going to read, and the next one that Coty is going to write a report on, is Batman Year One. Because we mentioned Frank Miller earlier, and I have a lot of things I want to say about Frank Miller, so tune in for that one, guys. We're a lot of people who are Batman fans. I mean, of course, Batman is a much more popular character than Superman by a large margin. Of course, I obviously like Superman more. But we'll talk about Batman Year One next time. So,
sounds pretty based.
Yeah. Class dismissed. And then I get up, and then I press this button right here, and it stops the recording.
Hey guys, I just want to thank you guys for watching. This is editor Trent here. We're going to make more of these for sure. Sorry about the editing. I originally was going to do something a little bit more elaborate, and then I was talking with my co-host, Coty, and I decided that we're going to go with more simplistic, simple, not a lot of work editing, at least for now, until we kind of get a little bit more. So I hope you guys really enjoyed this. We'll try to get the next one out pretty soon. And thank you for being the start of our little podcast. I hope this does well, and anyone who listened this far, thank you. Have a good night.